Hi everyone, we hope you're doing well. We're hanging in there though honestly, we haven't been getting much sleep lately. Today, we want to answer a question we get a lot: how do we publish our audiobooks? First, we post most audiobooks on Patreon as paid content. They stay paid for a few months. After that, they become free to listen to on Patreon forever. A few weeks later, we post them on other places like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, things have been a bit slow in terms of new members. So we'd love your help. Please share our site with your friends or in places like Facebook groups, Twitter, X, Discord, Reddit, or novel forums. Even one share can really help us grow. Thanks so much for your support, or cursing like a foul-mouthed brute, starting with the first Hokage, then the second, moving on to Gold and Silver Brothers, and finally, always making sure to give Mito and Madara a special mention. Although Kag told her before that the Ninetales was nothing more than a lonely, love-deprived big fox. That if she approached it with kindness and treated it as an equal rather than a monster, over time, it would eventually reciprocate with goodwill. She had tried. But it was like warming a stone with her own body heat. The best she got was indifference on its good days. On bad days, it would hurl insults at her. She wasn't some pushover. How could she just endure the Ninetales' attitude without pushing back? But now, everything had changed. With that bright, beaming smile on the Ninetales' face, as long as she sealed off her hearing, wasn't it just the most delightful sight? How long will this technique last? Kushina half lay on a sofa, wiping away tears of laughter from her eyes. Well, that's hard to say. If there's no external interference, it might last a lifetime. Scratched his cheek. If an ordinary person were affected by always smiling, they'd probably be stuck smiling for the rest of their life. But for a ninja, whether it was Orochimaru's body modifications or Tsunoda's medical ninjutsu, they could probably restore facial nerve function. The issue was that the Ninetales wasn't made of flesh and blood, it was a chakra entity created by the Sage of Six Paths when he split the 10 tails. Could it alter its own facial muscles and nerves? That was unclear. After all, even when Minato split the 9 tails into yin and yang halves, it still survived just fine. If the 9 tails was ruthless enough, maybe it could force a change in its own face. Though the process probably wouldn't be pleasant. Gurgle, 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 gurgle. Like the sound of boiling water, a noise rose from Kushina's body. Scarlet chakra slowly seeped from her abdomen, spreading across her body like a visible aura, forming a chakra cloak. That's just petty, Kushina muttered, then waved dismissively when she saw K's slightly concerned look. She reached into her ninja pouch, pulled out a palm-sized suppression talisman covered in sealing script, and slapped it onto her stomach. The orange-red Ninetales chakra that had been surging around her instantly dissipated. The sealing mark, which had become visible due to the Ninetales chakra flare-up, faded back into her skin. Kushina dusted off her hands with satisfaction. Her face practically shouted, "Come on, praise me." She had only heard K mention this kind of talisman twice, but after searching through the Uzumaki clan's inheritance texts for a long time and privately practicing, she had finally managed to create one. No matter how unruly the Ninetales was, with both Mito's seal and her suppression talisman working together, she could keep it completely in check. Bang! Just as K was about to shower her with praise and boost her mood, the guest room door was violently yanked open. Tsunoda, having just shaken off a Genjutsu, stormed in, exuding a fierce presence. Her face was grim as she scanned Kushina and K in the living room. Did the Ninetales seal break? We were just practicing how to control its chakra. K's mind raced as he hastily came up with a half-baked but somewhat plausible excuse. After all, whether it was saying that Madara wasn't dead or predicting that someone in the future might use Edo Tensei to summon him for chaos. To most people, that just sounded like paranoid delusions. Running off specifically to put a contract seal on the Ninetales because of that? Already ridiculous. Then, thinking the Ninetales' smile looked nice and giving it a permanent smiling face, only to cause it to go berserk? This. Yeah, he really didn't want to say that out loud. That's right. Just say it like that. Kushina nodded like a pecking chick, secretly giving her boyfriend a thumbs up behind her back. Tsunoda narrowed her eyes suspiciously at the two of them. Seeing that they were sticking to the same story, she couldn't be bothered to dig deeper. It wasn't her house, after all. Even if something got wrecked, she wouldn't be the one feeling the pain. Besides, instead of worrying about this nonsense, wouldn't it be better to continue that gambling game from earlier? That poker game was actually pretty fun. She already had 2 bear, just 1 more card, and she'd have a full house. Wait. She got so into the game that she forgot about the Genjutsu. She couldn't dispel it on her own and would need that to release her again. No, wait. Wasn't she here to deal with this brat in the first place? Tsunoda glanced at the clock on the wall, and her pupils trembled slightly. She had actually been playing in the illusion for an entire afternoon? If the Ganjutsu's energy hadn't weakened over time, and if the Nine-Tails chakra hadn't suddenly flared up, triggering her body's instincts to warn her, she might not have snapped out of it until the illusion completely lost power. This brat's Ganjutsu was insanely strong. Tsunoda's brows furrowed slightly as she looked at him with a much more serious expression than before. To use a near-instantaneous Ganjutsu while exchanging blows in battle, even those Uchiha guys with 3 Tomoe Sharingan might not be able to pull that off. And what was even more ridiculous, this near-instantaneous Ganjutsu also had mental backlash. When she first got caught in it, her yin seal-based sensory technique immediately warned her that she was under an illusion. But she didn't forcefully break free right away, not because she was enjoying the casino, but because she had tested it once. And just from that single attempt, a sharp, needle-like sense of danger clearly told her, if she forcibly broke out, her mind would suffer severe damage. Mental injuries weren't something that could be easily healed with mystical palm jutsu or other medical ninjutsu. Even for her, a spiritual wound would require significant recovery time. So, knowing that wouldn't actually hurt her, she just went along with it and enjoyed the illusionary casino experience. But hadn't this brat earlier told her to test the Hazuki clan's secret technique? That Ganjutsu was nothing like the Hazuki clan's jutsu. Tsunoda's sharp eyes locked on Tuke, who was now awkwardly forcing a smile. Short golden hair. This blonde kid was actually quite handsome. Decent build. Strong abilities. But wasn't his integrity just a little too flexible? The way he casually threw away his own words with zero guilt. Did Kushina pick her boyfriend just for his looks? So, Lady Tsunoda, how about a game of cards after dinner? Felt extremely uncomfortable under her stare, so he tried to change the subject. First, you explain to me exactly what the hell is up with the Hazuki clan secret technique. Chapter 48, the Uzumaki women's type explain. How was he supposed to explain this? There was no way could tell Tsunoda that he was just rambling nonsense and planning to take her down in one move when he got the chance. After all, in that situation, the only thing he could think of was the reason why she came looking for him and got physical with him. It was probably just because of the rumors about him and Kushina circulating in the village. The key issue was that he had no way to explain those rumors, and Tsunoda didn't seem like she wanted to hear any explanations anyway. If he didn't take her down first, was he supposed to just stand there and let her wreck his house? Later, when heard Kushina say that Tsunoda came looking for him because she couldn't borrow money from her, he thought about it for a moment and finally understood. Was Tsunoda really short on money? As the strongest medical ninja in the current shinobi world and one of the Sannin, if she just spread the word that she was out of money, forget borrowing, people would be lining up to give her money for free. It was just that Tsunoda at this stage wasn't as completely disillusioned as she was in the original story. She only let go of her image entirely when she was with family. So, when she saw Kushina seriously analyzing what kind of money could be borrowed and what couldn't, and once again advising her to stop gambling, of course, she had to come take a look. This woman. She came to inspect her future brother-in-law. His expression almost cracked. At least at this moment, he genuinely wanted to cover his face and run away. What a miscalculation. At the time, he was only thinking about stopping this violent woman from destroying his house. If he had known earlier, he should have had a little more patience and sparred with her for a while longer. Who knows, maybe after her little test, they could have all sat down happily for dinner. Hey Tsunoda, I heard that Jiraiya-senpai and Orochimaru-senpai are back too. How about we invite them over tonight and have some fun together? Seeing her boyfriend's awkward expression, Kushina quickly stepped forward, wrapped her arms around Tsunoda's, and changed the subject with a cheerful smile. TCH, what's so fun about those two idiots? I'd rather watch this kid's Ganjutsu. Tsunoda pouted unhappily but let Kushina pull her over to the couch. She had figured it out. Kushina's whole heart was with this kid, and she wouldn't tolerate him being wronged in the slightest. Women in love. Hopeless. Well then, after dinner, I'll perform for you, Tsunoda-ne? Tested the waters. Tsunoda gave him a "you're finally getting it" look before turning to pat her flat stomach. Then, she shot Kushina a glance that basically said, you handle this. She had overslept this morning and missed breakfast, then spent the whole afternoon slaughtering enemies in the illusion world. Now that the sky was dark, if she didn't eat soon, she was afraid even her chest would shrink from hunger. I got it. Quickly got up from the couch and headed straight for the kitchen. This was at least Kushina's family visiting. At first, he didn't understand the situation, so knocking her out with Ganjutsu was one thing, but if he didn't even offer her a meal now, that would be way too rude. Besides, if Kushina went to cook, he'd have to stay here making awkward conversation with Tsunoda. And he was afraid his toes would curl from embarrassment. Do you remember the announcement the village made a while ago? Kushina, amused by her boyfriend's hasty retreat, turned to strike up a conversation with Tsunade. Announcement? Who even pays attention to that stuff? It was about the Uzumaki clan. Oh, so? This time, K and Minato went on a mission together and brought back a girl from the Uzumaki clan. Her name is Onoka. I heard she's dating Minato. Wait, hold on. Why do all you Uzumaki women like blonde guys? Huh? What do you mean, huh? Do you only look at faces when picking a boyfriend? I remember. The two girls lowered their voices, chatting in the living room. K vaguely overheard the conversation in the living room and almost rolled his eyes to the sky. What do you mean all Uzumaki women like blonde guys? His hair wasn't just blonde, it was gold. Gold. And besides, weren't they basically the same? Weren't their hair colors the same? Forget it, since you just called me handsome, I'll let this slide. Muttering to himself, K decided to spare his future sister-in-law for now. He turned around, opened the fridge, picked out his favorite vegetables and meats to prepare dinner, and then glanced at the system interface. He had just received 3 chances to draw new traits, and he hadn't used them yet. Let's Gaka. Obtained, 1 pregnancy, 9 babies, blue, nothing to his name, gray, expired milk, white, 1 pregnancy, 9 babies, blue, a natural pregnancy enhancing physique. Increases pregnancy probability, with a small chance of having twins, triplets. Up to 9 babies. Enhances post-birth recovery and likelihood of future pregnancies, nothing to his name, gray, a pitiful guy cursed by misfortune. No matter how hard he tries to change, his length will gradually shrink to below 5 centimeters. Greatly increases the chance of being disliked by partners, breakups, divorces, and self-esteem issues. Expired milk, white, when using medical ninjutsu, causes unpredictable, subtle changes in its nature. Slightly improves medical ninjutsu control and healing effects, but patients may experience mild, short-term side effects, 1 blue, 1 gray, 1 white. K pursed his lips and subconsciously glanced at Kushina and Tsunade, who were whispering in the living room. He had only just started dating Kushina today, and the system was already thinking about babies. Wasn't that a bit too soon? And twins or triplets were still manageable. Diaper changes, feeding, rocking them to sleep, 2 parents could handle it. But 9 babies at once? Was this some kind of malicious curse? Giving birth was already tough for women. Carrying 9 at once? Even with a C-section, wasn't that basically a death sentence? And even if she somehow survived? 9 babies wailing at the same time, all needing to be fed. Holy, K shuddered violently. Nope, not thinking about it. This trait was practically as bad as a cursed black trait. And then there was, nothing to his name. At first glance, he thought it meant losing all his money. But no, it was worse than, 1 pregnancy, 9 babies. It even specifically stated, no matter how hard you try, it will still shrink. So even Orochimaru's soft body modifications wouldn't save him? Glanced downward and silently thanked fate for his generous proportions. Otherwise, this would have been terrifying. As for the last one, expired milk. For a medical ninja, it was probably, maybe, somewhat useful. It increased medical ninjutsu control and healing effects, but the mild side effects part was. Did I forget to wash my hands? Or have I just been doing too many bad things lately? Glanced at his hands, which were currently washing vegetables, and immediately rejected that thought. No way, this wasn't his fault. Absolutely not. He was a guy who loved his village. Though, he did take out the Anbu leader. He cared about his friends and even set up Minato's love life. He helped others, he even made Kurama smile. And he guided his students with care, while occasionally using them as free labor. He was a good guy. So, how could he be the problem? If anything, it was the system's fault. This shady system was probably broken from the start. Ever since he got the system, how many proper traits had he even drawn? Yeah, that was right. It was all the system's fault. He was a good guy. Chapter 49, Shikaku, you're my guy. Was quite dissatisfied with his trait extractions. If it weren't for the fact that he still had a trait duplication left, he might have demonstrated to the system on the spot what it truly meant to speak eloquently, in a rather colorful way. Compared to previous trait extractions, this time, he didn't get a single trait that could provide him with real benefits. Wasn't this just pure mental torment? Looks like I can't count on trait extraction in the future. With a sigh, temporarily pushed aside the frustration brought by the traits. Hearing Kushina and Tsunade whispering in the living room, he quickly focused on handling the ingredients in his hands. He had always been keenly aware of his own shortcomings. At present, he didn't lack powerful offensive methods. His mastery of yin release and water style allowed him to instantly take down the vast majority of ordinary Jonin. Even if he encountered multiple well-coordinated Jonin squads, the ultra-high mobility provided by the Flying Thunder God Jutsu would allow him to crush them with ease. The only thing he needed to consider was whether he had enough chakra. So, which type of trait he should duplicate was already a no-brainer. He had seen quite a few traits that could increase chakra: Nine Tails Jinchuriki, Tailed Beast, Overflowing Power, Chakra Storage. Among them, the strongest was undoubtedly Nine Tails Jinchuriki. As the most powerful tailed beast, the Nine Tails could do far too many things. Forget about the Varian mode from certain combustive materials, even just the perfect Jinchuriki mode was enough to make people drool with envy. But the corrosiveness of the Nine Tails chakra, he had seen it with his own eyes. Without the powerful vitality of the Uzumaki clan, an ordinary person becoming the Nine Tails Jinchuriki was basically the same as seeking death. And to become a perfect Jinchuriki, one not only needed the strength to suppress the tailed beast but also had to open their heart completely to it. For someone who would restore his phone to factory settings before dying, did he even need to think about whether he could do that? Not to mention, he was a transmigrator. Opening his heart to a tailed beast? Yeah, right. Then there was tailed beast. The Nine Tails was a unique chakra life form. If dared to duplicate this trait, he would probably turn into a chakra life form himself in mere minutes. Would he really end up like Dio, shouting, "I reject my humanity, Jojo"? As for overflowing energy, he should duplicate it from Ongoka instead. Overflowing energy, purple, the powerful bloodline of the Uzumaki clan grants immense vitality and abundant chakra. Cellular activity, lifespan, and chakra reserves significantly increase, along with a slight enhancement in physical strength. The power of the Uzumaki bloodline was undeniable. With this trait, he would essentially inherit the Uzumaki bloodline. Would he end up with red hair? He wasn't sure. But his body's bloodline would definitely undergo some changes. If his girlfriend weren't Kushina, he would have duplicated it from her without hesitation. But given the current situation, his only viable target was Ongoka. Luckily, Ongoka and Kushina were distantly related, far beyond the 5-generation limit. Otherwise, would he have the strength to endure it? Could his bones be that strong? Probably not. Damn. Tsunade. Can't you just have the sage body? It's literally from your own grandfather, why didn't you inherit something good? While stir-frying, was mentally ranting about Tsunade. Out of all the things she could inherit from Hashirama, she only got the gambling addiction, and she loses every single time. Absolutely ridiculous. If Tsunade had the sage body, he wouldn't even bother looking at overflowing energy. Even after venting for a while, he still felt regretful. Based on Orochimaru's progress in researching Edo Tensei from the original storyline, it would take at least another 10 years before he had a chance to see Hashirama. And even then, who knew whether Hashirama would still have the sage body trait after being resurrected through Edo Tensei? After all, an Edo Tensei body isn't made of flesh and blood, it's a reanimated corpse. At this stage, if he wanted to obtain the sage body, there seemed to be only one possible option. Madara? Forget all that Ajra and Indra Chakra influence. Madara did awaken the Rinnegan after obtaining Hashirama's power. That meant there was a high probability that he currently possessed the sage body. Who even knows where that edgy old man is hiding? Muttered as he quickly plated the freshly stir-fried dish from the pan. Just as he was about to start cooking the next one, a thought suddenly struck him. Yamato. In the original story, Yamato's wood style was somewhat underwhelming compared to Hashirama's legendary status as the god of shinobi. But during the Fourth Great Ninja War, when he was controlled by White Zetsu, he definitely made his presence felt. That wood-style technique, which could fire all 5 elemental releases, was downright terrifying. Could he also have the sage body? Nah, probably not. If he did, people in his past life wouldn't have made fun of him with lines like, "Hashirama's wood style conquers the world, Yamato's wood style does a landscaping." The one with the special physique was likely that White Zetsu called Toby. However, by this point, hadn't Yamato already undergone cell transplantation? Thought back to the timeline from the original series. Denzo and Orochimaru had secretly selected 60 infants for Hashirama cell implantation experiments. After most of the test subjects died, the project was abandoned. Yamato, deemed a failed experiment, miraculously survived and was later discovered by Denzo. By age 10, he had completed training en route and became a member codenamed Denzo. Soon after, Denzo assigned him to assist Orochimaru's defection. If the Snake Sannin defected when Yamato was 10, and we count backward. Right now, he should be around 3 or 4 years old. I wonder if Denzo has already taken him in. K's eyes flickered with thought. Based on his reasoning, Wood style and a sage body were likely two separate traits. Even if Yamato didn't have the sage body, he definitely had wood style. If he could get a hold of Yamato early on, and if he got another trait duplication in the future, could he maybe, just maybe, duplicate wood style? Kekek. Tomorrow, after visiting the archives, I should check the intelligence room and ancient records library. A sly smile appeared on K's face. Most of the time, expectations are beautiful, but reality is cruel. But hey, everyone needs a dream, right? Tomorrow, after going to the Hokage's archive room to select the two jutsu Hiruzen had promised him, he would dig through the intelligence room and ancient records. Who knew? Maybe he'd find information about Madara's hiding place. As for Yamato, the original wood-style research base, by now, probably very few people knew its exact location. And those who did know weren't likely to tell him. Sifted through his memory palace, searching for key details from the story. Then, he found something. The scene where Hiruzen confronted Denzo with an investigative report, ordering the immediate halt of wood-style research. His heart skipped a beat. A document like that would absolutely have been classified and sealed afterward. Most people would never have access to it. But he knew someone in the Hokage building who did. Shikaku. You're my guy. Chapter 50. Regret is scarier than death. With the speed of a jonin and skilled cooking techniques, prepared a lavish dinner in less than an hour. This was even after Kushina came in halfway, requesting an additional pot of rice enough for 10 people, and extra dishes were made in surplus. Otherwise, with his speed, half an hour would have been more than enough. The food was served. Tsunade, who was already starving, barely uttered a quick itadakimasu before she started devouring her meal like a storm. The rice in the pot disappeared as if it was playing at double speed. The generously portioned stir-fried dishes were also vanishing at a visible rate. Did she just have a fight with pain or what? Seeing Tsunade's aggressive eating posture, K paused midair with his chopsticks. If Kushina hadn't told him that Tsunade had been waiting for him for days, he would have suspected she had just finished an intense real-life park battle. Tsunade is developing a new jutsu lately, which takes up a lot of energy, Kushina explained, her face carrying an unmistakable hint of envy as she noticed her boyfriend's shocked expression. She didn't care about the jutsu development. What she envied was that Tsunade could enjoy all kinds of delicious food without any restraint. High-level medical ninjutsu required the use of yang-release chakra transformation. Just like the Akimaki clan's secret techniques, which allowed them to quickly store fat from food and convert it into chakra, Tsunade's mastery of medical ninjutsu meant that no matter how much she ate, she would only gain weight in the right places while keeping the rest of her body slim, without any concern about ruining her figure. In fact, eating more could even help replenish the chakra in her yin seal. She was so envious she could cry. The first thing that came to K's mind was the auxiliary seal that assisted the yin seal's operation, specifically designed to counteract ganjutsu. But thinking about it again, that didn't seem necessary. After all, Tsunade was the one who developed the yin seal with its chi-like effect that could reattach severed body parts. A small, technically simple seal wouldn't take her more than a few hours to figure out. That really wouldn't be a big deal. So was it a new jutsu? Wait a minute. Tsunade, with your current level of medical ninjutsu, is it possible to create a reincarnation ninjutsu-like? K seized the moment when Tsunade paused to chew and quickly asked. Her hand, which was about to scoop more rice, froze for a brief second. Her sharp eyes lifted from her rice bowl as she subconsciously thought of a certain white snake. Reincarnation ninjutsu? Hey, do you know medical ninjutsu? I know a few medical water-style techniques. K put down his chopsticks, feeling slightly embarrassed about this topic. Back when he was in the analysis team, he had gone through the memories of several medical ninja and even trained in medical ninjutsu for a while. Unfortunately, he was born without yang-release chakra affinity, and whenever he used medical ninjutsu, his chakra naturally mixed in some yin-release properties. Not only was it difficult to master, but the effects were highly unstable. A half-dead fish, after treatment, would either do a dramatic spin with a double backflip before dropping dead, or go completely stiff as if it had been knocked unconscious, dying on the spot. If he hadn't gotten water-style mastery from the system, which allowed him to instantly comprehend a few medical water-style techniques, his medical ninjutsu, its greatest function would have been adding more grilled fish to the analysis team's menu. Medical water-style, huh? That's a very gentle technique. Tsunade's sharp gaze softened considerably upon hearing K's answer. Unlike the mystical palm jutsu or creation rebirth, which rely on yang-release chakra to forcibly activate cell activity and induce rapid cell division for healing, medical water style instead provides the body with nutrients and energy using water chakra, allowing cells to naturally enter a stable regeneration state. In terms of healing efficiency, conventional medical ninjutsu outperforms medical water style by several leagues. However, excessive forced cell regeneration inevitably consumes the patient's life energy and shortens their lifespan. This is also why many severely injured ninjas remain weak for a period even after they have fully recovered. Although medical water style has a much slower recovery speed, it is undoubtedly more friendly to the patient and causes far less damage to the body than conventional medical ninjutsu. It is also a better treatment option for those with severely deteriorated bodily functions. In any case, someone who willingly chooses to learn medical water style, a technique more beneficial to the patient, rather than the more potent instant healing conventional medical ninjutsu, can't be that bad of a person, right? Tsunade resumed eating quickly, finishing another bowl in no time. As she scooped more rice, she finally spoke again. Why are you asking about life transfer? What do you want to do? I've heard of a technique called dragon life reincarnation. It uses yang release chakra transformation to transfer the user's life energy to another person, healing them no matter how severe their injuries are. I've heard of it. But once it's cast, the user dies. Are you willing to accept the cost? There are people and things more precious than life itself. And sometimes, regret is scarier than death. The moment finished speaking, the dinner table fell into silence. Tsunade, holding a freshly filled bowl of rice, stared blankly at the grains as she absent-mindedly poked them with her chopsticks. Kushina, deeply moved, was about to wipe away her tears when she noticed K subtly making a mind-body switch jutsu hand sign under the table at her. You bastard. Give me my emotions back. She puffed up her cheeks, afraid that Tsunade would notice her reaction. She quickly lowered her head and started poking at her rice with her chopsticks too. Rice, I'd rather have stayed in the pot. Do you have any leads on such a technique? Tsunade snapped out of her memories. She had to admit, even though she considered herself someone with nothing left to lose, the idea of such a jutsu still ignited a deep longing within her. If that technique had existed back then, could things have been different? I recently acquired a secret technique from the Hazuki clan called Hydration Healing Jutsu. It allows the user to turn into water and wrap around a target's wounds to rapidly heal them. It involves a form of life transfer. But this type of life transfer is purely passive, it doesn't touch the core essence of it. I've also heard that Taki's secret kinjutsu, Earth Grudge Fear, can completely transfer life energy into special black tendrils. Then there's the underground bounty stations in the Land of Fire. Some ruthless individuals there use a technique that transfers life energy through blood and binds it to hair strands. There is also a one-time use-only jutsu which uses life energy to achieve a complete transformation, shedding injuries and emerging reborn. Oh, and that rogue medical ninja Shinno, he's been to Hidden Lee Village a few times. It's said that he has extensive research on body activation and possesses a forbidden jutsu for physical regeneration. I think, if I can master these various life transfer methods, refine them slightly, and combine them with either the Fuma clan's metamorphosis technique or Shinno's physical regeneration jutsu, I might be able to create a technique similar to dragon life reincarnation. Casually laid out his initial plan. Tsunade's gaze, which had softened earlier, now turned sharp, filled with suspicion and caution. Does this kid even understand what he's saying? It was one thing if he was just talking about a jutsu from Kusa. But now he was bringing in Kiri, Taki, the underground bounty stations, and even that mysterious missing ninja Shinno. You're not trying to create a jutsu, you're trying to start a war. Chapter 51, The Possibilities Are Endless. K's idea of drawing from the strengths of many and creating a new technique was firmly rejected by Tsunade without any room for negotiation. According to her, merely transferring life energy wasn't particularly difficult. The real challenge was how to use the transferred life energy to heal the recipient's physical injuries. After all, not everyone was like Gaara in the original story. Despite being captured by Akatsuki and having his tailed beast extracted, his body remained intact. In most cases, the fatal injuries that ninjas suffered could only be described as horrific. Even Rin's death, having her chest pierced, was already considered one of the less gruesome ways to die in the ninja world. After listening to Tsunade, K silently revised his list of required techniques, removing the Earth Grudge Fear. At the same time, he highlighted the Dragon Life Reincarnation. Even if he couldn't openly seize them like Hidden Cloud's village did, with his current strength and mastery of Yin release, finding an opportunity to capture someone who knew the techniques and rewriting their memory afterward wasn't particularly difficult. Perhaps because of the conversation, Tsunade seemed to recall memories of her past. After finishing an entire table's worth of food and rice, she didn't ask to go on a rampage with a certain jutsu but instead returned to her room to continue researching her previous techniques. K and Kushina were exhausted from their day's work. K had just returned from a long mission, while Kushina had overseen the construction of the new Joan in standby station. After sorting out several large boxes brought back from the old Senju residence, they both washed up and went to their respective rooms to rest, exchanging a brief goodnight. As for any romantic cohabitation scenarios, in front of Tsunade, the two of them tacitly restrained any inappropriate thoughts. A silent night passed. At 9:30 a.m. the next morning, accompanied by the sound of drizzle, woke up from a deep sleep. They said every autumn rain brought a drop in temperature. This late September rain took away the last traces of summer's heat. Opening the bedroom door, the once spacious living room was now filled with ingredients and cooking utensils. The order he had given to Yoshino last night was neatly placed on the dining table, along with a sticky note and breakfast. "I've checked the order, and nothing is missing. I have an appointment with the furniture store owner today to customize furniture for the Jonin standby station, so I won't be back until the afternoon. There's an umbrella prepared at the entrance, don't forget to take it. Also, make sure to finish your breakfast before you leave." The handwriting on the sticky note was familiar. A faint smile appeared on K's lips as he washed up quickly and sat down to eat his breakfast. Even though Kushina wasn't home at the moment, the feeling of having someone always looking out for him was still warm and comforting for someone who had lived alone for so many years. After finishing his meal, he changed into a simple battle outfit and put on a brand new Jonin vest. After checking the scrolls in his pocket and the ninja tool pouch on his waist, he grabbed the umbrella at the entrance and headed out. On rainy days, the streets of Hidden Leaf Village were noticeably less crowded. Even though the stone-paved roads didn't get muddy in the rain, many people still preferred to stay indoors in such weather. He enjoyed rainy days. Whether it was sleeping under warm blankets, leaning on the windowsill watching the rain, or quietly writing something, the gentle sound of raindrops outside always made him feel especially peaceful and content. Holding his umbrella, he made his way to the Hokage building. At the steps leading to the entrance, he shook off the water from his black umbrella and temporarily left it in the first-floor document review room before heading upstairs to the archives. The archives were divided into an outer and inner section. In the outer section, there was a desk with 2 chairs, where an Anbu member sat, keeping his gaze fixed on K as he entered. The inner section was sealed off by a thick metal door, with another Anbu standing guard outside, maintaining security. Yesterday afternoon, an order signed by the 3rd Hokage was delivered to the archive room. The ox-masked Anbu captain in charge of guarding the archives registered K's visit and conducted another identity verification. Only then did he retrieve a catalog of jutsu from the archive room, one as thick as 3 fingers stacked together. "No need, I've already made my choice, Bringer of Darkness Jutsu and Spirit Transformation Jutsu." Waved his hand, not bothering to look at the extensive list. While the archive housed a vast number of jutsu, very few recorded in the catalog were actually valuable to him. His heritage, along with his time serving in the analysis team, had already granted him access to an overwhelming number of elemental and specialized jutsu, far beyond what an ordinary ninja could imagine. "Wait here." Ox nodded slightly, put away the catalog, and exchanged a glance with the other Anbu. Then, he pushed open the heavy metal door and entered the inner chamber of the archive. Moments later, he returned with 2 palm-sized scrolls and placed them on the table. "Confirm the authenticity of the jutsu, sign here. I don't need to remind you about the management regulations, do I?" His tone remained cold and rigid. As someone who had served in the Anbu since the time of the 2nd Hokage, he had long become a man of few words. For him, speaking this much today was already a sign of familiarity. Yeah, no recording, no taking them out, no leaking the principles of the jutsu, and no unauthorized teaching to others. Kun rolled the 2 scrolls, briefly scanning their contents before signing the confirmation document. Then, he carefully examined the details of both jutsu. Bringer of Darkness Jutsu was a knee-rank Ganjutsu designed to completely block an opponent's vision, plunging them into absolute darkness. Unlike most Ganjutsu, which could be disrupted once the victim becomes aware of the illusion and disrupts their chakra flow, the Bringer of Darkness Jutsu was different. The victim knew they were under a Ganjutsu, but the key issue was they couldn't break free. This technique was originally developed specifically to counter the Sharingan. Since the Sharingan had the ability to resist, reflect, and dispel most Ganjutsu, sealing its visual prowess with a jutsu of this caliber makes it extremely difficult to break. Although K's current Ganjutsu skills were already formidable, and he had incorporated multiple countermeasures against dispelling techniques, the unique mechanics behind Bringer of Darkness Jutsu still held immense value for refining his abilities. Spirit Transformation Jutsu was an S-rank technique similar to an astral projection, allowing the user's soul to detach from their body and move freely. This powerful technique enabled rapid movement over vast distances while ignoring physical barriers. Users could sense other souls from afar, transmit chakra through their soul, and remain immune to physical attacks. Perhaps most dangerously, it allowed one to overwhelm an enemy's mind and seize control of their body. The technique was so powerful that even after Edo Tensei was undone, it could retain control over lingering souls. As a member of the Yamanaka clan, X's techniques were already capable of breaking an enemy's spirit and taking control of their body. However, they lacked the ability to fully separate the soul, move independently, or transfer chakra remotely. If he could integrate spirit transformation jutsu into his clan's secret arts, he could adjust his soul state at will while utilizing his abilities, potentially taking his strength to an entirely new level. Moreover, the instantaneous soul movement ability that came with spirit transformation jutsu. The possibilities were endless. Chapter 52, Found You. Madara only took less than 10 minutes to read before returning the 2 ninjutsu scrolls. With Memory Master of the Shinobi World, his speed reading and memory abilities were greatly enhanced. 10 minutes was already him deliberately slowing down. If he was really in a hurry, he could have forcefully memorized the contents of the scrolls in his memory palace and reviewed them later at his leisure. Leaving the slightly oppressive archive room, asked the worker on the first floor and learned that Shikaku was once again on duty at the mission assignment office today. Not wanting to make another trip, he decisively opened his umbrella and headed toward the intelligence room. At the latest, he would see Shikaku by tomorrow night. Looking through those classified files required the right opportunity and timing. A day earlier or later didn't make much difference. Instead, it was better to go to the intelligence room first and ask the staff if they had any news about the mountain's graveyard. The light drizzle in the morning gradually turned into a heavier rain as time passed. The raindrops pattered against his umbrella, splashing tiny droplets into the air. Walking through the cold, rainy mist, spun the handle of his umbrella, watching the raindrops splash from the edges. Thinking about the bringer of darkness jutsu he had just read about, he felt his mood improve significantly. The technique could completely counter 3 Tomoe Sharingan and below, making it extremely difficult to break free from. Its principle was simpler than he had expected. It was indeed a Genjutsu. But the creator slyly incorporated sealing techniques into it. When activated, the target would first see darkness closing in like tendrils, quickly engulfing them and cutting off their vision. This step was actually preparing the sealing jutsu. Since sight was already affected by Genjutsu, the illusion energy then formed a simple seal around the outer layer. Who would think of that? Simply using Genjutsu dispelling techniques would never break a sealing jutsu. For most people, once trapped in this illusion, unless they had overwhelming raw power to break free by force, the only hope was for a teammate to quickly eliminate the caster. That's actually a brilliant idea. Murmured in admiration. Using Genjutsu as a medium to construct a seal while simultaneously using the illusion. Sure, it required insane technique, and even though it only sealed sight, the level of difficulty already reached A rank. But did he lack chakra control? Ever since he obtained 0 frame start, his jutsu control had improved dramatically. Even the Water Rasengan, a Super S-rank technique he once struggled with, could now be maintained for a full 30 seconds. Using Genjutsu to form a simple long-range sealing technique while using an illusion? It couldn't possibly be harder than water-style, spiral shuriken, right? Using a small flying stick and layering a one-line sealing array on top. Suddenly, an image popped into his mind. A dark shadowy figure, forcibly bound to a table. And standing behind it, a fully grown Kakashi, forming the tiger seal with his hands, watching like a predator. Damn, that's brutal. Too brutal. Shuddered, rubbing his arms as goosebumps rose on his skin. A Genjutsu version of the 1000 Years of Death was already terrifying enough to traumatize entire generations. Now adding a sealing technique on top. That was basically Naruto using 1000 Years of Death with a kunai tied to an explosive tag. Even hyenas weren't this ruthless. As his mind wandered with ridiculous thoughts, finally arrived at the intelligence department. He greeted 2 familiar guards at the entrance, casually handing his umbrella to one of them for safekeeping. Then, he strolled into the intelligence room, where classified information was sorted and compiled. By Hidden Leaf Village's administrative structure, his previous analysis team was a subordinate branch of the intelligence department. After working in the analysis team for so long, he was naturally familiar with the intelligence room, which was also under the department. Back already and heading straight to the intelligence department? Aren't you afraid Inoichi will rope you into doing grunt work? The head of the intelligence room, Sato, adjusted his thick glasses when he saw someone enter. After recognizing the visitor, he smirked and teased him. He was 11 years older than K and had been working in the intelligence department for nearly 10 full years. When K first joined the analysis team, he was just a half-grown brat in Sato's eyes. But in the blink of an eye, he had already reached the age where people talked about marriage. As long as I finish asking my questions and run fast enough, he won't catch me. Grinned and plopped himself onto the chair beside Sato without hesitation. After all, this was the intelligence department. Wasn't coming here basically like going home? You know the rules. If I can answer, I will. Sato chuckled, setting aside the documents he was organizing and looking at the mountain's graveyard. Do you know its exact location? Let me think. If I remember correctly, it's a basin or valley covered in some unknown miasma. Humans or animals who wanders in will get lost. The place is littered with the bones of large creatures, right? Yes. That's the one. Do you have the exact coordinates? Let me check. Ah, found it. You have clearance to look at it freely. Sato got up and walked to a filing cabinet marked year 40. After rummaging through rows of numbered files, he finally pulled out a sealed document folder, dusted it off, and handed it to Team Takame, Death Incident Investigation? Glanced at the title before opening the long sealed folder. The first thing inside was a detailed map of the Land of Iron, with the mountain's graveyard clearly marked. The rest of the folder contained several sketches of the area. They looked almost identical to what he had stored in his memory palace. The written records also provided a detailed account of what had happened there 6 years ago, as well as the official investigation results and conclusions. Takame, a ninja, skilled in sensory techniques, cautious personality? Didn't even need to read further. He already knew exactly what had happened. As a sensory ninja, Takame must have accidentally detected something unusual while passing by the mountain's graveyard. 2 possibilities: he noticed something off and decided to take a closer look, only to get killed by Madara. Or Madara sensed Takame's sensory jutsu probing the area and came out to kill him first. As for the investigation team that followed, Madara probably fooled them with Ganjutsu or some other method. Found you. Instinctively licked his lips, feeling his blood start to boil. At first, he was just casually trying his luck. Who would have thought that the location, which in the original story wasn't discovered until the Fourth Great Ninja War, was something he could find this easily. And since Madara was already there 6 years ago, and even took the effort to deal with Hidden Leaf Village's investigation team. Then before the Third Great Ninja War began, before he chose Obito as his successor and started brainwashing him, he most likely never moved from that spot. All I need to do is set up a Flying Thunder God mark. Prepare enough backup. If I can beat him, I'll grab the old man and beat the crap out of him. If I can't, I'll just copy his skill and run. Hehe. Chapter 53, The Baby Hitler Dilemma. Carefully committed the details of the Land of Iron's map to memory. He repeatedly examined the sketches of the mountainous burial grounds before finally placing the documents back into the file folder. After organizing the files, he bid farewell to Sato, who was still patiently sorting through fragmented information and rewriting intelligence reports. Retrieving his umbrella, suppressed his slightly restless emotions. After saying goodbye to the intelligence department members, he stepped once again into the curtain of rain. Obtaining accurate information on the hiding place so quickly was a completely unexpected surprise for him. Even so, he had no intention of seeking trouble with Madara today. After all, this was Madara. Whether from the memories of the original story or the records of the Yamanaka clan, everything spoke of this man's immense strength. His iron hone tai jutsu, his terrifying fire jutsu that could incinerate everything, the invincible Susanoo, the earth-shattering Tengai Shinsei. This was a man whose mere name was enough to make the entire shinobi world tremble. Even if had a hole in his head like Denzo, he wouldn't be reckless enough to charge in right after receiving this information. The drizzling rain continued to fall. The misty rain blurred the distant Hokage Rock, making it appear somewhat hazy. Meow meow meow. As his thoughts wander, the urgent cries of a cat, the sound of objects being knocked over, and the rapid splashes of footsteps echoed from an alley to his left. A sleek calico cat, its face full of panic, darted out of the narrow alleyway. After a few quick turns, it disappeared into a 3-meter-high pile of miscellaneous items stacked against a wall on the other side of the street. Not long after the cat vanished, 3 young geinin, who didn't seem older than 10, emerged from the alley, their clothes soaked through by the rain. Damn it. We lost it again. That cat is way too cunning. Obito complained bitterly, his face full of frustration. If a certain idiot hadn't insisted on wearing goggles in the rain and then shouted that he was caught in the hiding in mist jutsu the moment he spotted the target, we would have finished the mission by now, Kakashi retorted sarcastically. His emotionless deadfish eyes swept over every corner of the street, searching for any traces of the cat's escape. Damn it. If I hadn't been the one to spot the cat first, you wouldn't have even seen the target yet. Obito, feeling embarrassed, turned red with anger. Just as he was about to roll up his sleeves and argue with Kakashi, Rin stepped forward, positioning herself between the two and gently mediating the situation. Alright, it's okay. Let's just keep trying our best. Obito turned his head away with a reluctant hum of protest. Kakashi, on the other hand, didn't even glance at Obito. His eyes continuously scanned every alleyway, every step, every possible hiding place, searching for any sign of the cat. Senpai. When Obito turned his head, he immediately noticed standing nearby under an umbrella, watching the three of them. He had visited their teacher's apartment alongside Kakashi and Rin before. While flipping through an old photo album, he had seen pictures of their teacher together with. There were pictures of them entering the ninja academy together, pictures from their graduation, and even photos of the two returning from the Second Great Ninja War, battered and wounded but alive. According to Minato, this was a man he could entrust his life to, a true comrade. Thinking of this, Obito beamed brightly and jogged over to Senpai. I'm Obito, Minato-sensei's disciple. Have you seen a cat run by here just now? Junk pile, replied. He looked at the bright, sunny smile of the child in front of him, a flicker of complexity flashing through his eyes. He raised his hand and pointed to the pile of miscellaneous items where the cat was hiding. Name, Obito Uchiha, career, ninja, traits, deeply emotional, blue, kind, green, friend of the elderly, white, foolish, gray, deeply emotional, blue, a person of true emotions, unpretentious, rich in feelings. This trait enhances spiritual energy growth, slightly increases the power of fire-style jutsu, and boosts latent potential in times of crisis. Kind, green, a pure and simple heart, increases likability and improves relationships with others. Friend of the elderly, white, significantly increases the probability of encountering people over 50, raises the likelihood of being late, and greatly improves favorability when helping the elderly. Foolish, gray, decreases independent thinking ability, making one highly prone to foolish actions. There were no obviously villainous traits like those of Denzo, where one glance would tell you he was a bad guy. Nor were there any overwhelming genius-level traits. A fool, kind-hearted, unpretentious, deeply emotional, popular with old people, capable of explosive power in times of crisis. Wasn't this exactly the personality of a classic shonen protagonist? If he could just grow up normally with a teacher's encouragement, the companionship of his friends, and the care of those around him, even if he couldn't become a hero who saves the world, a person with these traits should at least shine with the brilliance of human kindness, right? Who would believe that this boy would one day turn into the embodiment of destruction? Glanced at the three not far away, sighing at the cruel tricks of fate. To be honest, he had once considered whether he should just eliminate Obito outright. But first, killing a child just because of something that would happen in the future felt like a violation of his conscience. It was like the classic dilemma of using a time travel machine to go back and kill baby Adolf Hitler. Could one justify eliminating an innocent who had not yet committed any crimes, solely based on what they might become? Second, Madara didn't specifically need Obito. What he required was merely someone who could be brainwashed, a pawn who would obediently follow his plan to realize the Eye of the Moon plan. Obito's awakening talent might be decent, but he was definitely not the only choice. Even if he were to die, in the future, there would be another Uchiha A, Uchiha B, Uchiha C, or even Uchiha D to take his place. But still, was it really unavoidable? Glanced at the system panel, eyes pausing on, "Why are you guy?" In the original timeline, the fundamental reason Obito was completely brainwashed and committed to executing the Eye of the Moon plan was that he had personally witnessed his beloved Rin being killed by Kakashi. But what if his beloved was Kakashi instead? Damn my moral compass. Why do I hesitate when given such a golden opportunity? Stared at his personal panel for a long time. He stood there, conflicted in silence. Not far away, Kakashi summoned 3 ninja dogs with the summoning jutsu, working with Rin to block the cat's escape routes on the ground. Meanwhile, he leaped onto the rooftop, preventing the cat from fleeing from above. Obito, bickering with Kakashi all the while, began moving the pile of junk, trying to flush the cat out. Seeing its hiding spot compromised, the calico cat jumped out of the junk pile. Obito quickly crouched low and lunged forward, successfully grabbing the cat. Before he could even celebrate, bam! He crashed headfirst into the junk pile. Boom, the precariously stacked junk instantly collapsed, burying both him and the cat beneath it. Even the continuous rain couldn't suppress the massive cloud of dust that billowed into the air. Quinced, feeling second-hand pain from the scene. Closing his eyes, he used sensory perception to check the bottom of the junk pile. There, beneath the rubble, despite being crushed and clearly in pain, Obito still stubbornly curled himself around the small cat in his arms, shielding it. Let out a small sigh in his heart. Obito, may you always remain kind-hearted. Chapter 54, 9 Babies and a Blessing. Obito. Obito. Rin ran forward in a panic, frantically pulling at the collapsed pile of debris. Even the usually indifferent Kakashi was startled, quickly leaping down from the rooftop. "I'm fine, hiss, Rin, I'm fine. Hiss, So painful. Cough, cough, almost choked to death. Obito's voice came from beneath the debris. He hadn't even finished speaking before he gasped in pain several times. Step aside. A calm voice came from behind Kakashi and Rin. Hearing it, the two immediately stepped aside, knowing that K had chosen to help. With a single-handed seal, the surrounding rainwater swiftly gathered around the debris. In an instant, a massive water sphere formed, completely enveloping the pile of debris in a translucent, pale blue water prison. With a flick of his hand, the water prison lifted several meters off the ground, carrying the debris within it, and then smoothly moved it to a corner. Now exposed beneath the debris was Obito, curled up in pain, grimacing while tightly holding a small calico kitten. "Are you okay? Don't move. Let me check." Rin rushed to Obito's side and pulled out a portable first aid kit from the pouch at her waist. She quickly began treating the wounds on his back. Meanwhile, Kakashi took the mission target from Obito's hands. His gaze remained fixed on the spot where the water prison jutsu had just dissipated. Instead of bursting apart with a splash, the water prison had released its contents in a controlled manner, neatly stacking the debris before dissolving soundlessly into the surrounding rain. That level of water-style control. He had never seen, no, not even heard of such a technique. The water prison jutsu could be used like that? And after using a water jutsu, the water didn't just disperse instantly? Was this man really from the Mizukage's clan? Shouldn't they specialize more in their clan's secret techniques? Or was he an anomaly? Or perhaps his clan's secret techniques were even stronger than water style? Hadn't Guy mentioned before that his squad's new instructor had the same name? Despite keeping his usual cold, dead fish-eyed expression, his mind was now filled with countless questions. Watching the mysterious figure quietly turn and leave, Kakashi's grip on the kitten tightened slightly. He had always believed that his own strength was already close to that of seasoned Jonin, lacking only battle experience. He thought that once his body grew a little more, once his speed and power improved further, he could stand among the best of the Jonin. But now, it seemed he had been too arrogant. Jonin. There were not only many strong ones but also true monsters like his teacher, and this man. Hey, Kakashi, I was the one who got the intel first this time, and I even captured the mission target myself. Obito, now receiving Rin's meticulous treatment, still had a childish look of pride and triumph on his face. As for his injuries, they were just bruises and minor contusions from falling debris. Once the medicine was applied, he'd be mostly fine in no time. Compared to the satisfaction of making Kakashi look bad, these minor injuries were nothing. You nearly got the mission target killed. Kakashi held the calico kitten under its front legs, looking at Obito with cold indifference and a hint of disdain. It was just a D-rank mission. Failing the first capture attempt was one thing, but then Obito not only got himself injured but nearly harmed the target as well. Impulsive. Reckless. Emotional. No sense of consequence. No concept of time. Always causing unexpected problems at crucial moments. Kakashi had never imagined he would ever have such a person as his teammate. Relax, teammates should get along, you know. Huh? Did Senpai already leave? We didn't even get to properly thank him for his help. Rin subtly shifted her position, blocking the tense eye contact between Kakashi and Obito. Glancing at the spot where Kat stood moments ago, she deliberately changed the topic, playing the role of the team's mediator and peacemaker. At a street corner hidden in a misty rain, rolled his eyes upon noticing Minato's shadow clone peeking from behind a wall. If you're going to keep an eye on him, why not do it in the open? Kakashi is already a Jonin, but his personality and approach to handling things are a bit extreme. I still hope he can come to understand the importance of comrades. If he knew I was watching, it would affect his true thoughts and decisions. Minato scratched his head with a sheepish smile, indirectly pointing out Kakashi's problem. Gifted, strong, and highly disciplined, but deeply affected by the incident with Sakamo. Some of Kakashi's behavior during missions gave Minato quite a headache. TCH, his father died for nothing. Clicked his tongue, casually making a jab at Kakashi. He'll understand one day. Minato sighed, a complicated look flashing in his eyes. Hidden Leaf Village's White Fang had once been seen as a strong contender for the title of 4th Hokage. Who could have predicted that a mere wave of rumors would drive him to take his own life? Back then, even Minato himself couldn't understand why Sakamo made that choice. But after K's insights and observing how Hidden Leaf Village had changed over the years, he truly felt the profound impact of that event. In the 6 months following Sakamo's death, Hidden Leaf Village's mission casualty rate skyrocketed. Though some higher-ups refused to admit their mistake, the Hokage repeatedly reminded ninjas to value both their own lives and those of their comrades when accepting missions. Many high-difficulty missions even included instructions allowing for withdrawal if necessary. As long as there was a valid reason, no one would be held accountable. The number of missions that required completion at any cost had significantly decreased. Many ninjas, especially those frequently assigned to high-risk missions, privately felt relieved. Who could say that White Fang's death had no meaning? Where's your real body? Had no intention of continuing the discussion about Sakamo. He had once tried to change the White Fang's fate, but the Hatake clan came from a lineage of samurai. Sakamo had his own beliefs and principles, and it was precisely because of them that he became the legendary White Fang of Hidden Leaf Village. So when those beliefs collapsed, neither K nor anyone else could have convinced him otherwise. Well, those researchers we brought back from Summoning Island have all been interrogated using reverse hypnosis by the Anbu. A new research facility is already under construction at Training Ground Zero. When Ongoka heard about it, she volunteered to undergo reverse hypnosis as well. So your real body is with your girlfriend, while your shadow clone is babysitting your student? Must be tough for you. Haha, it's not so bad. Come to my place tomorrow afternoon with Ongoka. Kashina, Shikaku, and Yoshino will be there too. We'll try out a new restaurant's menu. Ongoka will definitely be happy to hear that. Minato nodded with a smile. Anbu's reverse hypnosis wasn't as detailed as memory extraction, but it was enough to confirm Ongoka's allegiance. Having her undergo questioning before meeting Kashina would prevent any objections, even from the Hokage. Then, Minato suddenly recalled something awkward from the night before and hesitantly asked, "Do you know how to go about getting approval for residential land use? Planning a love nest? Can't stretch out properly in the Jonin apartments? Huh? No, that's not, Minato panicked. Just bring your Jonin ID and go see Suzaku. He's well connected. When you move into your new home, I'll send you the best blessing possible." K patted Minato's shoulder, cutting off any further explanations. What kind of blessing? 9 babies in one go. Chapter 55, an urn the size of a cigarette box. After bidding farewell to Minato, leisurely strolled back home. He quietly activated the secret technique of the Yamanaka clan again, connecting through the back door to the sensory barrier that enveloped the entire Hidden Leaf village. Following the chakra signatures of Guy, Kurenai, and Genma, he easily found the 3 of them under the awning outside the Sweet Chestnut store, eating yokin while watching the rain. He then performed a summoning technique, intending to summon his most familiar crow to bring the 3 youngsters over. This crow was different from the swift-type crow he had previously summoned in the Summoning Island. It had noticeably higher intelligence than its peers. It could understand and follow some not-too-complex commands. Its favorite pastime was wandering around Hidden Leaf Village during the sanctuary's free-flying hours, spotting people with food, and using its sweet-talking skills to snatch a few bites. Because of this habit, its body was nearly half the size larger than other crows, round and plump, causing its flight speed to be significantly slower than its peers. Amused by its intelligence, not only accepted it but even gave it a name, Corvi. However, wait, what the hell, where's Corvi? He stared blankly at the fading smoke. Refusing to believe it, he dipped his finger into his blood reservoir again and performed the summoning technique once more. Unfortunately, the crow was still nowhere to be seen. Feeling uncertain, he tried summoning other crows instead. A chorus of cawing instantly echoed throughout his residence. Did it die? He casually dismissed the summoning technique and stood up, bewildered. If the issue wasn't on his end, then something must have happened to his summoning beast. There were only 2 reasons a summoning beast wouldn't respond to a summoning. 1, it was trapped within a sealing barrier or had its body bound by a seal. 2, it had already passed away. Who in their right mind would go out of their way to seal a fat crow? So, how did Corvi, which was perfectly fine, just disappear? Yesterday, when he returned, he had left his falcon, Pidgeot, at the Bird Summon Beast Sanctuary for temporary care. The staff hadn't mentioned anything to him. Did something happen between noon yesterday and now? Wait. His memories flashed through his mind, replaying the scene from the sanctuary yesterday. When the staff received him, their expressions. At the time, he had been in a rush to report his mission with Minato at the Hokage's office and hadn't paid much attention. But now that he recalled it, their gazes seemed evasive. 1 or 2 people might have been a coincidence, but if no one dared to meet his eyes, then wasn't that suspicious? Are you kidding me? I pay so much money to the sanctuary every year, and they didn't even bother to tell me my summon is dead? The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. He even suspected that something had gone wrong at the sanctuary, leading to his summoning beast's disappearance. Without caring about his plans for breakfast anymore, he immediately got up and rushed toward the northeast part of Hidden Leaf Village. The Hidden Leaf Village Bird Summoning Beast Sanctuary was located in the northeast corner of the village, built against the cliff face of the Hokage Rock. On clear days, flocks of summoning birds could be seen soaring freely in the sky or perching on the cliffs for rest. But today, Due to the weather, most of the birds were staying inside the sanctuary to avoid the rain. Even from a distance, the sounds of various birds chirping filled the air. The moment K stepped through the sanctuary's entrance, before he could even ask a question, the staff members immediately bowed at a uniform 90-degree angle. The sanctuary's manager rushed over at full speed, bowing deeply before even lifting his head, and began apologizing. We deeply apologize. Your summoning beast, Corvi, unfortunately encountered an accident during its free flight time 12 days ago. Previously, I was taken to the Anbu for questioning, and the staff was instructed to maintain confidentiality, preventing us from informing you in time. This was our mistake. We sincerely reflect on our failure, and we will compensate you to make up for your loss. Please believe us. After his long-winded apology, the manager quickly pulled out an envelope from beneath the office desk, which had clearly been prepared in advance, and respectfully presented it with both hands. Judging by its thickness, it seemed to contain around 5 million ryo. 10 crows housed at the sanctuary, with an annual boarding fee of approximately 800,000 ryo. That meant the cost of keeping a single crow per year was 80,000 ryo. Don't think that's cheap. Currently, a war orphan in Hidden Lee village only received a 6,000 ryo living stipend per month. The cost of boarding a single summoning crow was higher than a person's living expenses. He had been raising Corvi for 3 years, which totaled about 240,000 ryo in boarding fees. Adding in the initial hatching and summoning beast training expenses, his total expenditure was roughly 300,000 ryo. A 5 million ryo compensation was, by normal standards, a sincere offer. Anbu? What happened? He looked at the sanctuary staff, who remained in their deep bowing posture. They hesitated multiple times before speaking, making him sigh in frustration. He had come here filled with rage. But their reasoning made sense, their attitude wasn't wrong, and since Anbu had ordered confidentiality, he really couldn't blame them. What now? Your summoning beast met with an accident near the end of its free flight time. While flying past the Hokage's office, it collided with the Hokage's advisor, who was exiting through the window. And unfortunately perished. The manager's face showed both fear and pain. This incident had cost him dearly. Previously, when an Anbu ninja came knocking, he had been taken in for questioning, even being suspected of deliberately attacking a high-ranking Hidden Lee village official. He had nearly died from shock on the spot. If it weren't for reverse hypnosis and memory probing proving he had no intent to harm Hidden Lee village's leadership, confirming that it was purely an accident, he might not have even made it back alive. And even so, the sanctuary still had to pay a hefty compensation to the Hokage's advisor. But who was really to blame here? The crow for flying too low and not defending itself? Or the Hokage's advisor for jumping too high? While wearing a steel helmet? 12 days ago? Denzo. I had just left the Hokage's office, and then he immediately turned my summoning beast into a corpse? Are you sure it crashed to death and wasn't skewered by a kunai? K's initial anger had faded, but now it flared up again. Denzo was targeting him, wasn't he? It had to be. Given how Corvi flew at the speed of a casual stroll, how could it possibly crash into someone hard enough to die? They say the Hokage's advisor was rushing to carry out a classified mission. He left using the body flicker jutsu. And was wearing a combat helmet. Your summoning beast was hit by the helmet? Yes. Please accept our condolences. Also, regarding the compensation paid to the Hokage's advisor, we at the sanctuary have already settled it. You don't have to bear any responsibility, so there's no need for you to worry. Compensation? That old bastard actually had the nerve to demand compensation? K was completely stunned. His summoning beast had been killed by Denzo's steel helmet, and that guy still had the audacity to turn around and demand a payout. Ahem. Here are the ashes of your summoning beast. Would you like to take them with you, or have them interred in our summoning beast cemetery? Hearing cursed Denzo, the sanctuary manager visibly shuddered and quickly changed the subject. He really didn't want another trip to Anbu headquarters. So no matter who was at fault, no matter whose responsibility it was, he just wanted this mess over with. Bury it in the cemetery. Looked at the small white urn in the manager's hands, barely bigger than a cigarette box. He felt furious. He felt frustrated. He was speechless. He was the one who gave Denzo big brainstorm. And now it was his summoning beast that had died because of it. Chapter 56, Karma's unexpected boomerang suppressed his temper and went to check on the remaining crows once again. He also took a look at the falcon that had arrived just yesterday. The young crows were still living comfortably, without any issues. Pidgeot was also inside the aviary, spending affectionate time with its mate from the island of summoning. Only after confirming everything was fine did he bid farewell to the caretakers and leave the area. He had arrived with his chest full of anger, but by the time he left, he felt much better. He never imagined that this boomerang would hit so hard. What was this? Karma? Retribution? Nonsense. Denzo had done countless despicable and unforgivable things. If karma were real, he should have been dead long ago. Still feeling somewhat irritated, he walked along the streets of Hidden Leaf Village toward Ameguriyama, where Kurenai, Guy, and Genma were currently staying. Ameguriyama was a well-established confectionery shop in Hidden Leaf Village, having been around since the era of Tobirama. The shop's specialty, yokan, was a jelly-like dessert made from simmered beans or chestnuts mixed with other ingredients. It was a favorite among the younger crowd. Since joining K Squad, Kurenai, Guy, and Genma had already completed 2 D-rank missions. These missions had not only helped ease their financial burdens but, thanks to the continuous 4 limbs waiting seal, had also significantly improved their combat abilities. Their teamwork had become much more synchronized after a week of missions together. Originally, the 3 had planned to train at Training Ground for today, but due to the weather, they had to change their plans. You guys heard about it, right? Those summoned beasts that were auctioned off recently, turns out they were all taken down at once by a Genjutsu. Genma, chewing on a senbon, casually chatted with his teammates while watching the rain outside. Yeah, over 100 summoned beasts of various sizes. Even if they were all squeezed into one area, the range would still be larger than the school's training ground. Sensei is really amazing. Kurenai propped her elbow on the table and rested her cheeks in her hands. Her slightly chubby face, still carrying traces of baby fat, was full of admiration. She really wanted to become such a powerful Genjutsu master, someone who could make enemies fall into endless nightmares with just a flick of the wrist. That sounds like an incredible battle achievement. Guy punched the air enthusiastically, as energetic as ever. I think I just heard someone praising me. A familiar male voice suddenly came from behind them. The 3 of them turned around with bright smiles. There stood K, holding an umbrella and wearing his usual warm smile as he looked at them. Huh? Sensei. Good morning. Genma reacted first, quickly standing up to salute. Guy followed suit, mimicking his movements with such a serious expression that one might think he was heading to the battlefield. Kurenai quickly walked around him, checking him over. Only after confirming that there were no blood-stained bandages or the scent of medicine on him did she finally breathe a sigh of relief. In the shinobi world, except for those who used umbrellas as ninja tools, most ninjas didn't carry them. During high-speed movement, umbrellas would be an obstruction and hinder mobility. So when she first saw their sensei carrying an umbrella, she thought he might have been injured and was avoiding getting his wounds wet. Thanks for your concern, but I'm fine. I'm carrying an umbrella because, well, someone told me to take one when I went out today. Easily picked up on Kurenai's unspoken worries and casually ruffled her hair. He had to admit, his students' concern for him felt quite heartwarming. Of course, that didn't mean he was going to let them slack off. If they worked hard enough, maybe he'd give them a small reward. Kushina-senpai is so gentle. Kurenai immediately realized who had reminded their sensei, and her eyes sparkled with admiration. Kushina gave an order, and their teacher followed it so seriously, it looked so sweet. Guy and Genma, hearing Kurenai's words, silently nodded in agreement. During their teacher's absence on missions, Kushina had been the one taking care of them, answering their questions, and guiding their training. Though, sometimes, just like, she had a mischievous side. For example, just when they had finally adapted to the 4 limbs waiting seal their teacher had left on them, Kushina used the same excuse of giving a gift to suddenly increase the seal's restriction level by 1 notch. But despite this, Kushina was truly an outstanding and gentle senpai. Are you all coming over to my place today? I'm planning to make some new dishes and have someone taste them tomorrow. Seeing how much the 3 admired Kushina, felt even better and decisively set his trap. Your house? Then we'll help too. I've actually learned a lot about cooking at home. Without a second thought, Kurenai jumped right into the pit, completely unaware of how massive an undertaking this would be. We can probably help with the prep work. Genma scratched his head and pulled Guy along into the prep team. At their age, even if they weren't too keen on learning how to cook, they couldn't resist the power of delicious food. Kushina had mentioned more than once that back when their teacher was in the ninja academy, he was already an exceptionally skilled cook. Who didn't love good food? Taking advantage of the lighter rain, the group made their way to K's house. When they arrived, the luxurious 3-story mansion, spanning over 200 square meters, left the 3 of them in awe. But when they entered and saw the massive amount of ingredients and kitchen tools occupying nearly half of the living room, they all fell silent. Damn it. They got tricked again. With this much food, you could open a restaurant. Click, how I am heading to the hospital. Save some lunch for me. Yawning, Tsunade, dressed in casual and slightly messy clothes, opened the bedroom door and walked out, casually greeting while putting in her lunch order. Lady Tsunade. Good morning. Kurenai's eyes sparkled like jewels upon seeing Tsunade. Guy and Genma quickly snapped out of their daze, standing up stiffly to salute Tsunade. Even though they knew Kushina and Tsunade had some sort of family-like relationship, wasn't this a little too much? Living together with her boyfriend and bringing her bestie along? You're heading to the hospital at 11? Raised an eyebrow. He thought Tsunade and Kushina had gone out together this morning, but she had actually slept in until now. As long as I make it in time for the funeral. Tsunade waved it off nonchalantly and turned toward the bathroom. Honestly, she was only going out of respect for the old man. Some of the people attending made her sick, why would she bother healing them? You're not treating Denzo, are you? Immediately had a hunch based on her expression. There were very few people in Hidden Leaf Village who could irritate Tsunade this much, and Denzo just happened to be one of the ones not doing so well recently. You sure are well informed. Want to come watch the show? Tsunade smirked slightly, knowing that both and Kushina were at odds with Denzo. Ahem, more like I'm just worried about how much trouble you'll cause. TCH, that brat really tells you everything. Tsunade clicked her tongue in annoyance and continued toward the bathroom. Meanwhile, K's grin was so wide it was harder to suppress than an AK-47's recoil. Denzo. You didn't see this coming, did you? I'm on my way. Chapter 57, Hiruzen's Art of Negotiation vs Tsunade's Door no Jutsu. Just arriving at K's house, the three students who were about to be mercilessly left behind looked utterly confused. Seeing that the teacher had to go out unexpectedly, the three of them originally intended to reschedule their visit for another time. However, K simply created a shadow clone, instantly solving all the issues at hand. Having tricked 3 free laborers into coming over, how could he let them go so easily? Who would roll out the pastry dough in the afternoon? Who would stuff the hand pies? Who would whisk the custard? The shadow clone stayed at home, washing and cleaning various pots and pans while skillfully directing his students to work. Guy kneaded the pastry dough with vigorous enthusiasm, Kurenai washed and prepared fruits for the fillings, and Genma carefully measured and mixed the spices for the custard. The three of them worked enthusiastically. Meanwhile, K and Tsunade headed toward Hidden Leaf Village Hospital together. Inside a special care ward on the 3rd floor of Hidden Leaf Village Hospital, seated on the hospital bed, Denzo had an 4-drip attached to his left hand while his right hand swiftly flipped through the latest intelligence reports from various ninja villages, which were spread out on a small table. A root member, wearing a Nanbu mask and standard Nanbu gear, dutifully stood guard beside the bed. Tiny, densely packed parasitic insects, no larger than grains of rice, covered the ceiling and walls of the ward. Although the constantly wriggling swarm of insects made the room look eerie and unsettling, compared to high-maintenance and energy-consuming defensive barriers that required multiple people to maintain, this small inconvenience was hardly worth mentioning. After reviewing all the intelligence, Denzo closed his eyes to process the information in his mind. Then, he picked up a blank scroll and began assigning missions for the root members to carry out over the next 2 days. Click, the door of the hospital room was opened. The root member standing beside the bed slightly bowed in respect as 3 elders entered the room. Denzo's sharp gaze swept over them. Upon seeing the Hiruzen, as well as Koharu and Hamura, his cold expression softened slightly. He closed the scroll in his hand and set it aside for the moment. What do you want? Has Tsunade not come to treat you yet? Hiruzen walked to the sofa and sat down, completely unfazed by his friend's cold tone and indifferent attitude. He understood Denzo's emotions and, to some extent, sympathized with his situation. After all, anyone constantly on high alert, wary of an unknown force that could attack at any moment, would be in a foul mood. She's probably hoping I die here. Denzo's lone eye locked onto the pipe that Hiruzen had just taken out, and the pressure in the room immediately dropped a few degrees. She just has some misunderstandings about you. We all recognize your contributions to Hidden Leaf Village. Facing his friend's silent condemnation, Hiruzen finally relented and put the pipe away. Seriously. Fine, I won't smoke, but why are you glaring at me like that? You're too lenient with her. The same goes for Jiraiya and Orochimaru. Look at what they've become now. Koharu and Hamura also sat down on the sofa. Hearing Hiruzen's attempt to downplay the issue, Koharu immediately refuted him without hesitation. Jiraiya was carefree and undisciplined, disregarding the regulations for Hidden Leaf Village as ninja. Every time he left on a mission, he used intelligence gathering as an excuse to wander around searching for the so-called child of prophecy for Mount Mayabaku, often going missing for long periods. Tsunade was lazy and hot-tempered, frequently skipping high-level meetings, sneaking out of Hidden Leaf Village to drink and gamble. Wasn't it just because her lover had died shortly after she gave him a keepsake? It had been so many years since his death, was she really going to stay in a slump forever? And then there was Orochimaru. Sure, he accepted missions diligently, but as soon as he returned, he locked himself in his lab, obsessed with researching ninjutsu, unable to extricate himself. If this continued, something bad was bound to happen sooner or later. Tsunade is still young. It's natural for her to have some flaws. Considering her grandfather and our teacher, you should be more tolerant. Once again, Hiruzen skillfully avoided addressing the issues with Jiraiya and Orochimaru, merely acknowledging a minor flaw in Tsunade's behavior. He even brought up Hashirama and Tobirama, hoping Koharu would let the matter slide. But he had clearly underestimated the years of pent-up frustration and anger his old teammates had accumulated. Being young is no excuse for her laziness and decadence. The achievements of the first Hokage and our teacher are not her license to act recklessly. As their descendant, she should serve as an example for the other. Boom. The hospital room's door was violently blasted off its hinges. The warped, mangled door flew straight toward Koharu, who was seated on the sofa. As a former member of the second Hokage's elite bodyguard squad and once among the top jonin, Koharu, who had just turned 51, had significantly declined in power but was not yet as old and frail as she would become in the Shippuden era. Instinctively, she lashed out with a whip kick, barely managing to deflect the warped door panel. Staggering, she retreated to the window of the hospital room. Buzz. A massive swarm of parasitic insects instantly covered the hospital bed. Denzo watched as the twisted door panel embedded itself deep within the writhing insect swarm, stopping less than 10 centimeters from his head. Only then did his bristling hairs slowly settle. His gaze swept over Tsunade, who had just kicked in the door, and Koharu, who was still fuming with anger. He almost couldn't suppress the killing intent surging within him. They all knew he had been ambushed. Any slight disturbance around him could be a sign of an attack aimed at his head. And yet, these two women were causing a commotion inside the hospital room? Did they have water for brains? Okay, that was the wrong question because the human brain was about 73 to 80% water. Were they actually thinking of using this chance to get rid of him? Standing a step behind Tsunade, looked through the now empty doorway. Seeing the collapsed door panel and the swarm of parasitic insects covering the hospital bed, he sighed regretfully. Denzo really had a knack for survival. His gaze shifted to the side, where a root member had blocked the flying door panel with his insects. The ninja's presence was so faint that he merely stood silently in the corner, almost blending into the background. Quickly understood. Based on the timeline, this should be a Barame Tatsuma, the man Denzo would later see as his right-hand man after the Third Great Ninja War. Still young but quite strong, probably superior to many of Hidden Leaf Village's jonin. As took stock of the people in the room, Tsunade's forehead throbbed with bulging veins, and the blue-colored Dian seal on her forehead darkened instantly. That's enough. Which part of what I said was wrong? Koharu discreetly flexed her slightly numb right leg but refused to back down even an inch. Even though Tsunade was now far stronger than her, she still didn't think she was wrong. Seeing the tense standoff about to erupt into a real fight, Hiruzen hurriedly stepped between them, seamlessly taking on the role of mediator. Tsunade, Koharu just spoke a little harshly. You know how she is, she's never had any ill will toward you. And Koharu, we all watched Tsunade grow up. Of course, we hope she'll become even better, but even as elders, we need to be mindful of our approach. Tsunade, we're already old. The future of Hidden Leaf Village rests on your generation's shoulders. We worry about the future, which is why we hold you to a higher standard. The first and second Hokage entrusted the village's future to us. Naturally, we worry about whether we've done enough, whether we've done well enough. Hiruzen's endless speech, filled with genuine concern, gradually softened Tsunade's stance. Hamura stood to the side, nodding in agreement. Even Koharu, who had been holding her ground stubbornly, took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and gradually eased her expression. The only exception was Denzo, who continued watching coldly, a mocking smirk tugging at his lips. If anyone knows how to talk his way out of things, it's the third Hokage. Watched in admiration as the atmosphere quickly diffused under Hiruzen's art of negotiation. His ability to smooth things over was truly impressive. If you had any emotional connection to Hidden Leaf Village, how could you not be swayed by his words? And that's why he is Hokage. Denzo, take notes. Huh? Facial expressions. Manage your facial expressions. Seeing Denzo's mocking expression, he immediately realized that his own face wasn't quite right either. He quickly put his acting skills to work, flawlessly mirroring Hamura's solemn expression. Chapter 58, the Leonardo DiCaprio of the ninja world. When watching the anime in his past life, he actually quite disliked Koharu and Hamura. At times, he even felt that they were just Denzo's lackeys. But after living in this world for over 10 years, he gradually overturned his original impression of them. These two were truly rare, good people among Hidden Leaf Village's higher-ups. Hamura was a conservative, yet he had his own principles. Although he tended to overthink things and constantly worried about whether others were handling matters properly, often questioning everything, which gave him the image of an annoying meddler, he never actually interfered directly. He only gave advice, as was his duty as a senior advisor. Koharu had the ideology of collectivism ingrained in her very bones. She was rigid, serious, and blunt to the point of being hurtful, but she truly prioritized the village above all else. She was the first to propose the extermination of the Uchiha clan when they became a threat to Hidden Leaf Village. Yet, when Denzo opposed Hiruzen's reinstatement as Hokage, she was also the first to question Denzo's whereabouts during the Nine Tails attack. The fact that these two managed to live into old age while still holding positions as elders wasn't just because they were disciples of the second Hokage. The reason they were so disliked was simply because they didn't side with the protagonist in his reckless actions. Early Naruto was all about bonds and ninja way, often disregarding Hidden Leaf Village's ninja regulations. When he said he wanted to chase after Sasuke, no one could stop him. When he insisted on seeking out Orochimaru, no one could dissuade him. But at its core, Hidden Leaf Village was a military organization. A lack of discipline and structure? It would have been strange if Koharu and Homura had supported that. Didn't you notice? Once Naruto grew up, he completely changed his attitude toward them, showing them utmost respect. It wasn't because they had changed, it was because he finally realized that without rules, there could be no order. To protect Hidden Leaf Village, one must first uphold its rules. If everyone did as they pleased, Hidden Leaf Village would fall apart. As for Tsunade, she lost her parents at a young age, leaving only Hashirama, Tobirama, Mito, and Nawaki. Hashirama died before she even had a chance to grow up. A few years later, Tobirama died while negotiating a peace treaty to protect Hidden Leaf Village. Her younger brother, just after declaring his dream of becoming Hokage to protect Hidden Leaf Village, died. She finally met a kind man who promised to become Hokage and protect Hidden Leaf Village, only for him to die in front of her on a mission. When she returned to Hidden Leaf Village seeking comfort from her grandmother, Mito also died while transferring a tailed beast to protect Hashirama's legacy, Hidden Leaf Village. She was basically the Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic, The Revenant, and Shutter Island combined of the Naruto world, surrounded by tragedy and loss at every turn. If Gore in her shoes, he would have found it unbearable. He might not hate Hidden Leaf Village with a burning passion, but he'd definitely develop an aversion to the phrase protect Hidden Leaf Village. Who the hell would dare mention that to him? He'd probably drag out the clan registry and tell everyone else to go protect Hidden Leaf Village instead. So when it came to the conflict between Tsunade and Koharu, he really wanted to say to Koharu, I know you mean well for Hidden Leaf Village, but please, just let her be. Her family registry only has one page left. The commotion in the hospital room didn't last long. With Hiruzen's well-practiced persuasion skills at play, Koharu immediately took her leave. Seeing that there was nothing left for him to do, Homura also followed suit and exited the hospital. The two walked to the door, politely nodded at K, and then turned to leave Hidden Leaf Village Hospital. We can begin now. Denzo spoke up as soon as the nuisances were gone, urging things along. He couldn't afford to wait any longer. He had undergone thorough examinations in the root headquarters, but the medical ninjas there couldn't find the cause. Even Orochimaru had claimed he was powerless to help. A few days ago, the Fire Temple had sent an old monk named Chukaku to examine him, but he too was at a loss. Even the root ninja who went to the land of demons to consult the priestess didn't get to meet her, they only received a cryptic message, the one who tied the bell must untie it. Like hell, I don't know that the user of the technique can undo it. The key issue is, which bastard used it? Tsunade didn't have the patience to waste time with Denzo and immediately got to business. Tatsuma, standing beside her, respectfully handed over a stack of medical reports, more than a finger's thickness. She quickly skimmed through the data, her brows gradually furrowing. A minor immune rejection response, natural cellular aging leading to decreased vitality, no abnormal chakra reactions. The problem is obviously not physical. There's nothing I can do. After flipping through just a dozen pages, she delivered her diagnosis straight away. Are you not going to conduct a more thorough examination? Denzo's tone revealed his clear reluctance to accept this conclusion. Meanwhile, standing by the door, glanced thoughtfully at his system interface. He noticed that, single-eyed 3 Tomoe, had disappeared. Just as I thought. Like hell, Denzo would let Tsunade examine him in detail without first digging out his own Sharingan. Your body is fine. Further examinations will yield the same results. As for your condition, I suggest consulting an expert in yin release. Tsunade's gaze casually drifted toward K, who had been sneakily watching from the doorway. Inside the hospital room, both Denzo and Hiruzen instinctively followed her gaze. Denzo's face darkened even further. Seeing this, Hiruzen had no choice but to invite Gin. You should have some understanding of Denzo's situation. right? Tsunade mentioned it briefly earlier. Inwardly cursed Tsunade for throwing him under the bus. He was just here to laugh at Denzo's misfortune, maybe even consider slipping him some special system goods to exact a little revenge for the countless people he had wronged. If Tsunade didn't want to deal with Denzo, fine, but why shove the responsibility onto him? What's your take on this? Hiruzen saw nothing inappropriate in Tsunade's words. If Denzo's body had no issues, then the only logical path was to consider factors related to spiritual energy and yin release. And who better to consult than a member of the Yamanaka clan, renowned experts in yin release. And, in particular, was a standout among them, excelling not only in their clan's secret techniques but also in powerful Ganjutsu. Who else could they possibly ask? Hokage-sama, no matter how yin release techniques manifest, they all require chakra to function. In this case here. Deliberately put on a troubled expression. His hesitant, half-spoken response was too obvious to escape the sharp eyes of the three elders. You may speak freely. When I was studying Forbidden Seals, I came across some records from the Warring States period. Things like the Shinigami that can seal souls, Soma that devours memories, Morio that harnesses dark energy. Attempted to shift the blame as far away from himself as possible. As expected, both Hiruzen and Denzo frowned deeply at this. Those kinds of forces were beyond the realm of normal ninja techniques. Ahem. Of course, that's not to say there's no way to resolve the condition. Abruptly changed his tone. Years of experience had taught him that when redirecting blame, a light push was all that was needed. People were far more inclined to believe conclusions they arrived at on their own rather than explanations forced upon them. If he said too much, they might start suspecting him instead. What solution do you propose? A barely perceptible glimmer of expectation flickered across Denzo's dark expression. Your main issue is that his head keeps getting attacked, right? Learning a technique similar to the Hazuki clan hydrification jutsu would solve that. His head could explode and still regenerate perfectly. Offered what he considered the best solution. A moment of silence fell over the room. Both Hiruzen and Denzo stared at him wordlessly. The Hazuki clan hydrification jutsu. Without the Hazuki clan's bloodline, who the hell could even learn that technique? Chapter 59, Daio's second dance. Tsunade's originally serious and stern expression completely collapsed when she heard K's words. Due to the unique nature of ninjutsu, learning the Hazuki clan hydrification jutsu was no less difficult than developing a bloodline limit. How difficult was it to develop a bloodline limit? Among the 5 great ninja villages, each had inherited techniques from predecessors that allowed the development of bloodline limits. The magnet style of Hidden Sand Village, the storm style of Hidden Clouds Village, the lava style of Hidden Stones Village, and the boil style of Kiri. But how many people in the entire shinobi world could actually master them? Did Denzo have that kind of talent? If he did, would he be lying here? Tsunade ultimately couldn't suppress the smile at the corner of her mouth. She raised her hand and patted K on the shoulder. Nice idea, but don't think about it next time. Secret techniques that are closely tied to bloodline limits are extremely difficult to train for those who do not possess a bloodline limit. Denzo is no longer young, he doesn't have the time or energy to study these things. Hiruzen tactfully gave Denzo a way out. Ninjas might appear glamorous, but in reality, it was not an easy profession. Constant chakra use and frequent injuries drained the body's potential, leaving hidden wounds. Most ninjas experienced a sharp decline in physical condition once they passed the age of 40. Their abilities and overall state began to deteriorate. Considering Denzo's current age, a technique of this difficulty? Best not to make things hard for him. Denzo's already dark expression grew even darker upon hearing Hiruzen's words. What did he mean by he's no longer young? What did he mean by he doesn't have the time or energy to study this? Hiruzen was basically saying outright that he couldn't learn it. Denzo let out a cold snort, too lazy to argue with Hiruzen about such things, lest he become a laughingstock in front of the younger generation. Meanwhile, he quietly began to ponder K's words. In truth, he had long suspected that whoever targeted him might not be a ninja at all. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sought out the power of the Fire Temple or the Priestess. Yet, neither the Hidden Leaf Village archives, nor the treasured texts left by the Saratobi and Shimura clans, contained any information matching his symptoms. If he kept searching like this, he would likely run out of opportunities. But K's second suggestion gave him an idea. It wasn't necessary to solve the root cause of the attack on his head. What if he simply became immune to such attacks? Normally, mastering secret techniques that required a bloodline limit was incredibly difficult. But what if he possessed a bloodline limit? Experiments with wood style had mostly failed because the first Hokage's cells were simply too strong. They would reject and devour the host's own cells, causing them to turn into trees and die. But other bloodline limits didn't have such risks. Besides, half a month ago, When Orochimaru requested research funding, hadn't he mentioned a major breakthrough in bloodline limit studies? He could already transplant certain bloodline limits. If Denzo could obtain the power of a bloodline limit, would he still have to worry about failing to master those defensive techniques? And once he mastered those techniques, even if his head got attacked again, so what? Denzo's eyes flickered. Among the bloodline limits that could provide immunity or resistance to physical attacks, 4 came to mind: the Magnet style, which had extraordinary defensive capabilities; the Kaguya clan's Shikatsu-myaku, which could harden the skull; the Hazuki clan's Hazuki clan hydrification jutsu, which allowed them to turn into water. The Iburi clan's bloodline limit, despite originating in the Land of Fire, had severe flaws that made it unsuitable. Even their strongest members were forced to live in underground caves, fearing that a mere gust of wind could prove fatal when they transformed into mist. So that left. Which one could Orochimaru transplant? Don't be discouraged. There's always a solution. Hiruzen once again tried to comfort him. He understood his old friend well. If this problem wasn't solved, Denzo's mental state would take a serious hit. And with the current state of the shinobi world, things weren't looking good. Hidden Leaf Village couldn't afford to have the leader of the route sink into further despair. You're still here? Denzo lifted his gaze to Hiruzen. The problem hadn't been solved, so what was the point of staying here and spouting nonsense? I'm just sitting here with you for a while. It's been a long time since we've had a proper conversation. Not necessary. I understand you. Anyone would be affected by something like this. But after all these years, haven't we weathered countless storms together? Hiruzen seemed to recall the hardships of the past, and his gaze softened considerably. Close the door on your way out. Denzo pointed at the twisted and deformed door on the ground, turned his head away with a cold snort, and impatiently urged him again, listened to the exchange between the two and thought he must have misheard. Wait a minute. What kind of script did those two usually follow? Why did these lines sound just like those from that old drama The Gentle CEO and His Tsundere Wife? Damn. If those two kept acting like this, he might just wish them a long and happy life together. Hiruzen, sensing an intense gaze from the side, turned his head to see Tsunade standing with her arms crossed and tilting his head up, counting the Kikaiku bugs crawling on the wall. If you two have nothing else to do, go back and rest. And, close the door on your way out. TCH. Tsunade scoffed disdainfully. She picked up the hospital room door, which had been nearly reduced to scrap metal. With her absurdly inhuman strength, she bent it back into its original shape within seconds. Though the metal still bore twisted creases, it should at least be usable for now. System. Quick, quick, quick. Gift, why are you guy? To Shimura Denzo. Tsunders are out of style, I refuse to see a bad ending. Seeing that the old man wouldn't let them stay and watch the drama unfold, hurriedly sent his well wishes. A white light flashed and quickly sank into Denzo's body. No one noticed. Denzo stared at the Kikaiku-covered wall, dazed for a moment, before suddenly falling into deep thought. Had he been too harsh on Hiruzen? Even though that guy had answered Tobirama's question first, causing him to miss his chance at becoming Hokage, over the years, he had never truly wronged him. This attack on him wasn't Hiruzen's doing, so why take his anger out on an old friend? Bang! The slightly deformed door was yanked into place by Tsunade, forcefully wedging it back into the frame. She casually dusted off her hands and walked away without a second glance. Followed behind her, thinking about the future events that might unfold, particularly that one infamous image that had circulated online of Hiruzen x Denzo kissing. Goosebumps covered his skin. Yet, despite the shivers, he couldn't suppress the grin forming at the corners of his mouth. Walking felt lighter, his mind clearer, his entire body relaxed. If he didn't completely mess with Denzo, it would be an insult to his own capabilities. Letting Denzo get Dio-ed twice, so what? So what? Chapter 60, Rainy Day Revelations. The sound of raindrops pitter-pattering outside the window had been going on for 3 days and nights, just like you, my dearest love, who still hadn't come home after all this time. Hummed raindrops keep falling on my head as he cheerfully made his way toward the Yamanaka clan's territory. Are you deliberately trying to annoy me? Tsunade, who had been interrupted from her thoughts multiple times, gave a slap on the arm in irritation. This little troublemaker had zero awareness. Couldn't he see she was seriously thinking about something? You don't get it. This is a nice song. Rubbed the spot where he was hit and sighed internally, this woman had a hell of a strong hand. If someone ever tried to pursue her, just one little fists hitting your chest moment and they'd probably get sent flying on the spot. Oh, wait. She didn't have a lover. Well, never mind then. Stop bothering me, I'm thinking. Tsunade shot a sidelong glance, too lazy to argue over his nonsense. After forcibly taking half the space under the umbrella, she bit her thumb, deep in thought over the medical reports that had given her an uneasy feeling. Biting your nails is bad for your health. Do you want to get beaten up? A big vein popped on Tsunoda's forehead as she glared at K, gritting her teeth. How many times had this happened? How many? She was just trying to focus on something important. Why was it so damn difficult? If there's something bothering you, just tell me. Maybe I can help you figure it out? K wasn't the least bit intimidated by Tsunoda's threats. What a joke. Right now, he had the upper hand. Messing around like this was fine, but if Tsunoda really wanted to get serious, he could easily put her on the ground in seconds. Did she really think zero frame start was just for show? How could she know that he had it? The rejection reactions in Denzo's medical report are strange. Do you know anything about rejection reactions? Tsunoda shot a murderous glare at K. When it came to medical ninjutsu, she proudly considered herself the second best in Hidden Leaf Village, because no one dared claim first place over her. Although the fluctuations in the test data were small, they indicated a clear rejection reaction. According to the report, this reaction was supposedly due to an artificial eyeball implanted years ago to prevent facial deformation after Denzo lost his right eye. It all seemed reasonable, and the data didn't show any major issues, yet she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. That was why she kept going over the numbers, trying to pinpoint exactly what was wrong. He doesn't have Uchiha blood, yet he implanted a Sharingan. How could he possibly not have any rejection reaction at all? K scoffed, casually exposing Denzo's dirty secret. Denzo was indeed cautious. The bandages he kept wrapped around his head were inscribed with sealing techniques that masked the unique chakra signature of the Sharingan. This time, in order to avoid Tsunoda detecting anything strange during treatment, he had even gone so far as to remove the Sharingan beforehand. Plus, since he had never openly used the Sharingan in Hidden Leaf Village, no one had ever suspected him. For years, this secret had remained undiscovered. But rejection reactions didn't lie. Even Kakashi, a natural genius, struggled with his Mangekyo Sharingan due to rejection issues. He couldn't freely control its activation, and every fight left him chakra depleted. A Sharingan? Are you sure? Tsunoda's pupils contracted, and her whole body trembled in shock. Denzo. A Sharingan? Where did he even get one? Wasn't he afraid of being exposed and facing the full wrath of the Uchiha clan? How could he dare? Don't look at me like that. He removed it in advance so you wouldn't notice anything during treatment. But who knew you'd just glance at the medical reports and not bother checking further? What a waste of an eyeball. K's smirk deepened. No matter whether Denzo used anesthesia when he dug out his eye or not, the recovery period must have been painful. Once his body healed enough, he'd have to put it back in anyway. Suffering both ways. Why couldn't he suppress the smug grin creeping onto Denzo's face? Are you sure? Tsunoda still hadn't snapped out of her shock and asked again. Believe it or don't. K had no intention of explaining further. He couldn't be bothered to tell people things like this, because, more often than not, no one would believe it anyway. And even if he did publicly expose Denzo, what would happen? Sure, the Uchiha Hawks were aggressive, but the ones holding power now were the Doves. Most of the clan leaned towards pacifism. They hadn't suffered direct persecution during the Third Great Ninja War, hadn't been pushed to the village's outskirts after the Nine Tails attack, hadn't been the subject of endless rumors, and hadn't faced constant discrimination. Even if they wanted to reclaim that 3 Tomoe Sharingan, they wouldn't outright declare war on a high-ranking Hidden Leaf Village official like Denzo. Given his current position in the village, the more likely outcome would be a diplomatic excuse, something like, "This was a gift from my dear friend, Kagami, to help me protect Hidden Leaf Village." Then, after some negotiations with the third Hokage and Denzo, an exchange of benefits or promises would be made, and the matter would be quietly settled. That damn old bastard, can't he just go home and wait to die? Tsunoda cursed viciously. She almost turned around on the spot, ready to beat Denzo until he was completely bedridden. But she knew he had already removed the Sharingan. Without solid evidence, she couldn't do anything to him. And Root wouldn't just stand by and let their leader get attacked. The third Hokage wouldn't ignore it, either. The Root ninjas? They weren't a big problem. The third Hokage. She couldn't beat him. Damn it. Hey. Watch where you're stepping. What's with the glare? If you need to vent, go find Jiraiya. Noticed Tsunoda's increasingly dangerous gaze and glanced at her speechlessly. Why was she taking her anger out on him over Denzo's mess? Who wants to look for that pervert? You've been sneaking peeks at my chest this whole time, what's wrong with charging you some interest? Boom. A single heavy stomp cracked the ground into a spiderweb pattern. K's left foot was instantly obliterated into a mist of water, scattering in all directions. What a pity for Tsunoda. Whether it was pure taijutsu or even her famous monster strength, None of it worked against the Hazuki clan hydrification jutsu. In the next second, as the rain poured down, K's left foot fully regenerated. In this kind of weather, unless someone unleashed a large-scale lightning jutsu, barely any ninjas could harm him while he was in his water state. When did I ever sneak a peek? Keep this up, and I'll sue you for slander. Denying it? What's there to deny? I looked openly. What's wrong with appreciating beautiful things? TCH. Save your sweet talk for Kushina. Trying to fool me? You're still too green. Tsunade unleashed a flurry of punches, sending water splashing everywhere. Didn't even bother dodging, letting the rain-like punches land on them, all while internally marveling at how incredible the Hazuki clan hydrification jutsu was. It was like being a Logia fruit user. Not only did it make him immune to physical attacks, but even his clothes could transform along with him. And who said sweet talk didn't work? Tsunade's anger was clearly much weaker than it had been with that first stop. Women. Phew, time to head home and eat. After venting her frustration, Tsunade turned on her heel and started walking toward the Yamanaka clan's territory. That's not your home. But after a moment's hesitation, he decided to just keep the complaint in his heart. Chapter 61, Despising, Understanding, Becoming quatched as Tsunade kicked off her high heels, walked barefoot to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of sake, and took small sips while urging his shadow clone to cook. He looked utterly doubtful about life. Was this really his home? Then why was she so naturally sitting at his dining table, bossing him around to make food? The shadow clone glanced at him, who was standing behind Tsunade, trying to figure out what had happened during the time the real body and Tsunade had spent together at Hidden Leaf Village Hospital. Otherwise, why would she suddenly act like Jiraiya's long-lost sibling? Yep, overly familiar. You handle this. The shadow clone decided not to waste time thinking and dispersed into a puff of chakra smoke. Lady Tsunade, what would you like to eat? Kurenai poked her head out of the kitchen. Through the thickest of rose-tinted idol filters, she only saw Tsunade as bold and righteous, truly worthy of the title of Hidden Leaf Village's greatest kunoichi. I'll have whatever Kushina is eating for lunch. Tsunade propped her chin with one hand while casually swirling the sake bottle in the other, throwing the problem straight at K. She didn't believe he'd make something terrible for Kushina to eat. Wait, are you paying for the meal with that attitude? K rolled his eyes in frustration. TCH, I'll bring you his water-style scroll later. Now hurry up and cook. Tsunade waved her hand dismissively, completely unfazed. Lady Tsunade, please wait a moment. K's expression changed in an instant. Under the bewildered gazes of Guy and Genma, he didn't hesitate for a second. He grabbed an apron and rushed into the kitchen. Obirama, the man rumored to have signed a contract with the ocean itself. A master of water style, whose jutsu left even the best water users questioning their existence. Water style, water-severing wave, heavenly weeping, water style, hard whirlpool water blade. Each one devastatingly powerful and insanely practical. Even though K had studied countless water-style jutsu in his years in the analysis team, could they even compare to the lifelong creations of Tobirama? Once he mastered Tobirama's techniques. By then, holding both the second Mizukage's and the second Hokage's legacies. As he fantasized about his glorious future, he noticed his students looking at him with disdain, as if they wanted to disown him as their teacher. What are you staring at? Guy, need that pastry dough again? I'll teach you a lost strong fist technique later. Ever heard of explosive impact? Genma, heat up the milk for the crepes, grab the whisk, and mix the batter properly. Want to learn flying nail mist soaring and torpedo nails? Then get moving. Kurenai, want to learn how to make croissants properly? Pay attention, later, I'll teach you an original Ganjutsu, Phantom Curse of the Wailing Spirit. Despising, understanding, becoming. Under the tempting lure of new ninja techniques, the three of them moved with impressive speed. Kurenai, who already had a basic understanding of cooking, quickly got the hang of it after watching K demonstrate twice. Once she got comfortable, she even started chatting. Sensei, I heard you have a Ganjutsu that makes anyone caught in it collapse in agony, and even summoned beasts suffer unbearable pain. Is that true? Her face was full of anticipation. Clearly, compared to the Phantom Curse of the Wailing Spirit, she was way more interested in this one. Who told you that? K paused for a moment, looking a little weirded out. Among all the Ganjutsu he had created, there were quite a few that made people scream in torment. But the only one capable of making even summoned beasts suffer was probably Trump's ecstatic nightmare realm. As an advanced version of Here's a D for You, Trump's ecstatic nightmare realm forced the target into a Ganjutsu where they became Trump, who was being relentlessly pursued by Dahmer. If they didn't get caught, the chase continued indefinitely. And if they were finally caught, well, Dahmer got to have his fun. Back then, when he was young and reckless, he hadn't held back. He only cared that the technique was effective, that it could deal a devastating psychological blow to both humans and summons alike, instantly breaking their mental defenses. Everything else didn't matter. But now, he was older, and he actually cared about his reputation. I heard about it from Jiraiya-senpai. Did I say something wrong? Kurenai blinked her eyes, asking cautiously. Jiraiya had mentioned that this Ganjutsu was only classified as a B-rank technique, the same level of difficulty as the jutsu Herc had taught her, so she figured she'd ask about it. But judging by the reaction, had she just touched on something she really shouldn't have? That damn bastard! Gritted his teeth, cursing under his breath. Jiraiya had been getting more and more shameless these past few years. Since Minato had become Jiraiya's apprentice early on, had never been too unfamiliar with him. For some reason, he couldn't even remember why, Jiraiya had once asked to experience one of his Ganjutsu. And it just so happened that Trump's ecstatic nightmare realm was fresh off the drawing board at the time, so he figured, why not test it? And thus, Jiraiya, and his summoned toad, became the first ever victims. It was just a Ganjutsu. It wasn't real. So why the hell was Jiraiya still holding a grudge over it? Did he seriously go out of his way to tarnish his reputation as a teacher in front of his own student? Slap. 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 Ha 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 ha. Oh, I remember now. I remember. You guys are talking about that jutsu, the one that even scared the toads of Mount Mayabaku. Kurenai, let me tell you about it, ha ha ha. Tsunade smacked the table, laughing so hard she was nearly in tears. And with each laugh, waves and ripples rolled uncontrollably, visually captivating, to say the least. Just remembering how Jiraiya had shivered at the mere sight of Orochimaru for over a month, and how a certain toad from Mount Mayabaku had undergone a complete transformation. She was laughing so hard that she could barely breathe. Frowned, debating whether to stop Tsunade from continuing, but he hesitated. If Jiraiya were the one telling the story instead, things would probably sound even worse. After all, if he had already brought this up to Kurenai, his credibility was already in the negative. Seeing Tsunade laughing uncontrollably, and their teacher awkwardly avoiding the topic by focusing on making croissants, his three students instinctively knew, this was a story worth hearing. A tale of Jiraiya and their own teacher. Not to mention, one of the three great summoning lands, Mount Mayabaku, was somehow involved. They had to hear this. Please continue. After finally laughing enough, Tsunade composed herself and began recounting the events of that year. The story wasn't even that complicated. Back then, Jiraiya wanted to test K's unusual Ganjutsu on a summon first. So, he called forth a toad named Gameriki from Mount Mayabaku. Originally, Gameriki was a clean and proper male toad, handsome, even. He was apparently quite the ladies' frog back in Mayabaku, with plenty of female toads chasing after him. As a summoned beast, he naturally thought, what kind of Ganjutsu could possibly affect me? And then, boom. Not even 3 seconds after the jutsu was cast, he exploded into smoke and immediately fled back to Mayabaku. Jiraiya tried to summon him again to remove the Ganjutsu, but Gameriki flat out refused to return. Curious, the young Jiraiya couldn't resist trying the technique himself. And then, well, he did manage to break free through sheer willpower. But for over half a month afterward, he would tremble at the sight of Orochimaru. Not only that, every time he squatted down, he would violently fart. He went through so many pairs of pets that it became a public concern. It wasn't until Hiruzen finally couldn't stand it anymore and ordered a specialized Ganjutsu therapist to help Jiraiya recover that the situation was brought under control. And as for Gameriki, a month later, when they saw him again, he had transformed completely. Fiery red lips, a seductive posture, and a pink bow tied on top of his head. And he, too, suffered the same post-Ganjutsu trauma as Jiraiya. Squat, fart. Squat, fart. And the worst part? He was a toad. As Tsunade told the story, she kept smacking the table while laughing uncontrollably. Guy looked down at his own tight-fitting bodysuit, suddenly feeling deeply unsettled. Genma, on the other hand, shuddered so hard that he almost dropped his senbon. This side effect is terrifying. Chapter 62, Pandora's Illusion Sensei. Kurenai's big eyes sparkled with anticipation. Although she didn't say anything, her expression explained everything. She wanted to learn this. She really wanted to. Guy and Genma saw Kurenai's expression and instinctively took a step back in fear. She suddenly felt so unfamiliar. Almost terrifying. If you learn this, you might have trouble finding a boyfriend. Had a strange expression. He really didn't want to ruin the bright future of Hidden Leaf Village's new generation. But clearly, this sapling didn't think the same way. The newly graduated Genin naturally longed for strength. A Ganjutsu that even troubled one of the Sannin for over a month. A technique so powerful that even the sacred toads of Mount Miyabaka fell victim to it. Sensei, please teach me. Kurenai's face was now full of determination. She wanted to become a renowned kunoichi like Tsunade. As for boyfriends, that could wait. Had never wanted to strangle Jiraiya more than at this moment. A bewitching but dangerous disciple, walking down an irreversible path. If she learned even one of those genjutsu, it would be like opening Pandora's box. Who knew what she would become? Just thinking about her ultimate fate in the original story, suddenly understood. Not having a boyfriend for a while wasn't necessarily bad. At least it meant she wouldn't become a widow in the future. And based on his current knowledge and experience, after reading the data of so many people, he had absolute confidence that he could teach her well. He wouldn't say she'd end up like Guy, nearly kicking the final boss into oblivion. But her Genjutsu surpassing even the 3 Tomoe Sharingan? No problem at all. As for whether she could counter or even suppress the Mangekyo Sharingan, that wasn't up to his teachings. That depended on her own potential. Sensei? Kurenai raised face, nervously watching her teacher's constantly changing expression. I'll ask one last time, are you really ready? If you learn this technique, you'll gain a lot, but you'll lose a lot too. Took a deep breath and questioned his young disciple. Trump's ecstatic nightmare realm was a high-level Genjutsu that could severely affect both vision and touch at the same time. Its training difficulty was about the level of a standard B-rank jutsu, but its upper limit was insanely high. The core principle was similar to the Sly Mind Effect jutsu, trapping the enemy in a labyrinth-like illusion. At the same time, it used the demonic illusion, hell-viewing jutsu, causing the victim's worst fears to materialize and chase them. Ultimately, rather than saying the victim was captured by the Dahmer, it was more like they fell into a state similar to the demonic illusion, tree-binding death, fully conscious, yet unable to move or resist. At this point, visual interference was complete. But beyond continuing to assault the opponent's sight, it was necessary to intensify the sensory manipulation of touch. In Genjutsu, touch could influence many sensations: cold, heat, warmth, pain, pressure, pulling, even pleasure. After studying so many Genjutsu, could believe that touch manipulation was the hardest to master. But if controlled well, it could be a deadly weapon. If Kurenai really wanted to learn this jutsu, refining her control over touch-based illusions was essential. More importantly, before mastering this technique, she had to learn how to resist enemy Genjutsu. She had great talent for mental power, but compared to she was still far behind. That meant she absolutely had to learn the demonic illusion, mirror heaven and earth change, which was a counter Genjutsu technique that could reflect illusions back at the user. Additionally, Genjutsu techniques like Bringer of Darkness Jutsu, which combined with sealing techniques, could also be useful. Of course, she didn't have to start with complex Fu-in Jutsu. The string light formation should be fine for now. Sensei. I'm ready. Kurenai nodded eagerly. Learning her teacher's ultimate technique. Becoming a Genjutsu master was within reach. How could she not be excited? Sensei, is the strong fist really powerful? Guy vigorously kneaded the pastry dough with such intensity that the table almost seemed like it was about to crack. The layers of butter being folded into the dough created perfect lamination for the croissants as his powerful hands worked with surprising precision. He had heard about the ninjutsu that was going to teach Genma. It was 2 techniques that could be unleashed with just a single seal, possessing immense power. But what he was teaching Kurenai, that was an ultimate secret technique capable of even giving a Sannin a hard time. Explosive impact? He had never heard of that. Traditional martial arts use Aikido to harmonize with attackers, combat sports use explosive impact to dominate the fight. Have you heard of the 8 trigrams? Gentle fist? The Hyuga clan? The Hyuga clan's gentle fist does contain some elements of Aikido's circular movements, but it's still fundamentally different. Explosive impact is a style that stands alongside Aikido, focusing on generating maximum force through kinetic linking and ground reaction forces. Began explaining to Guy the origins of explosive impact and some of its techniques. Thanks to the advanced internet from his previous life, he had actually learned quite a bit of real knowledge back in his middle school edgy phase. Originally, with the passage of time, he had forgotten most of it. But with Memory Master of the Shinobi World, he was able to recall it all again. So now, he could explain it with complete confidence. Even without delving into the biomechanical principles of kinetic chaining and force multiplication, just explaining the practical applications of explosive impact, how to generate maximum power through hip rotation, proper weight transfer, optimal striking angles, and explosive muscle recruitment, was enough to make Guy feel like he had discovered a priceless treasure. He was shaking the stone mill so hard that it looked like sparks were about to fly out of it. At first, Tsunade didn't think much of it. After all, had never displayed any exceptional talent in taijutsu. But after listening for a while, She could no longer underestimate this explosive impact. Her ears perked up as she carefully memorized the key points of the strikes and techniques. If this was paired with her monstrous strength, would one strike be enough for her medical ninjutsu to revive Jiraiya afterward? The breakfast spread was impressive: golden brown croissants with their buttery layers perfectly visible, crepes filled with various combinations of Nutella and fresh Baileys, crepes with ham and Gruyere cheese, and savory breakfast quiches with bacon and spinach. There were also fluffy Belgian waffles topped with whipped cream and maple syrup, eggs Benedict with perfectly poached eggs and hollandaise sauce, and an assortment of cured meats and cheeses arranged on wooden boards. And finally, steaming pots of freshly brewed herbal tea, a special blend from the land of tea that had been saving for special occasions. Tsunade never once lifted her head from the table. Guy and Genma's eating speed was just as astonishing, a croissant in one hand, a crepe in the other. Among his students, only Kiranai managed to maintain a slightly more refined eating posture. There was no need for any verbal praise. Just looking at their reactions was enough to tell how amazing the food was. But this was just a fraction of the breakfast dishes could prepare. And tomorrow's event was already planned. There would be more than just 4 people attending. So, after lunch and an hour of rest, everyone got busy again. Kushina finally arrived home around 2 in the afternoon. In order to participate in this food tasting and gathering with friends, she had rushed to finish all her work for today and tomorrow ahead of time. After hurriedly stuffing some food into her already growling stomach, she energetically joined the rest of the group. One after another, various half-prepared gourmet dishes were continuously being made by the 5 of them. Meanwhile, Tsunade had left the house for a bit. Half an hour later, she returned carrying the water-style scrolls of the second Hokage. As soon as she unsealed the storage scrolls, she shocked with the sheer depth of the Senju clan's legacy. Holy crap! Everyone knew Dobirama had a ton of water-style scrolls. But who would have thought he had this many? Chapter 63, 80% lies, 100% ambition. The bookshelves were piled high, filling nearly half the study with various scrolls and ancient texts. The sheer sight of it was breathtaking. Among the scrolls Tsunade had brought back this time were not only water-style jutsu created by Dobirama but also numerous ancient water techniques passed down by the early Senju clan. Additionally, there were countless training notes, insights on jutsu development, and spontaneous records of inspiration left behind by predecessors. All of these had been carefully reorganized and annotated by Dobirama himself. For any water-style user, such a collection would be a dream come true. Yet, Tsunade treated it as if it were nothing more than trash. She casually tossed the scrolls aside, dusted off her hands, and returned to her room to continue developing her jutsu. You're amazing. Just say the word if you ever want something to eat. Didn't hold back in flattering her. This kind of collection could single-handedly support the foundation of a ninja clan. It wasn't something money could measure. It was the very essence that ensured a family's legacy and stability. As long as such knowledge was preserved, even if future generations were talentless or mediocre and the clan declined, a single talented individual could use this inheritance to restore the family's strength and keep it thriving. With such a valuable gift from Tsunade, if he still had any sense of shame left, he might have thrown it aside just to hug her leg and sing a heartfelt "You've got a friend in me." Of course, if he really did that childish display, Tsunade would likely send him flying through the nearest wall. She was never known for having a good temper. And for anyone acting too familiar or crossing boundaries with her, she had a well-practiced and highly effective countermeasure, usually involving her legendary strength. Suppressing his wild thoughts, forced himself to focus. With an overwhelming urge to bury himself in books, he dived headfirst into the study, immersing himself in absorbing the knowledge left by his predecessors. He had just completed a mission yesterday. Unless there was an emergency requiring his unique skills, he wouldn't be getting another assignment anytime soon. Given Hidden Leaf Village's current mission workload and the third Hokage's leadership style, it would probably take at least 10 days or half a month before he was sent out again. That gave him plenty of time to study and absorb all this invaluable experience and knowledge. By the way, Kushina, how's Kurama today? Recalling how he had pranked the Ninetales yesterday, nearly causing it to go berserk, he asked with slight concern. Don't worry, I soothed it properly today. It was laughing so much, gahaha. Kushina burst into laughter, her voice turning into a goose-like cackle. Still, it was clear that under her relentless efforts and various suppression techniques, Kurama had little room to cause trouble. Don't keep bullying the Ninetales. That old fox has had it rough. But weren't you the one who started it yesterday? Now it's even learning the curses from your ninjutsu. I seem to recall a sealing technique called the silencing seal. Yeah, but it's kinda weak. The seal strength isn't high enough. Kurama can break free with just a bit of effort. Tomorrow, Ongoka is coming over. You two can work on an advanced version together. A. 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 She's coming over? Yeah. She's undergoing reverse hypnosis interrogation in the Anbu today. After that, she probably won't have much to say. Ongoka is the best. K and Kashina chatted away as they skillfully handled ingredients in perfect harmony. The three students stared at the scene in a daze. For some reason, this once spacious kitchen suddenly felt a little crowded. Orochimaru opened the door to Denzo's hospital room. He glanced at the barely attached door hanging in his grasp, knowing that if he let go, it would immediately fall off its hinges. His eye twitched. Since when did doors just fall off like that? His gaze shifted to the slightly deformed doorframe and the heavily creased door. Then, remembering that today was the date Tsunade was scheduled to treat Denzo, everything became clear. Carrying the door into the hospital room, several spotted pythons slithered out from Orochimaru's sleeves and carefully reattached it to the frame. It seems like you had quite an eventful day. The snake slowly retreated back into his sleeves. Orochimaru's lips curled into a faint smirk. His usual eerie demeanor now carried a hint of wicked amusement. He was certain that Tsunade hadn't been able to completely solve Denzo's problem. However, she must have given him some kind of inspiration, otherwise, there was no way Denzo would be this eager to summon him to Hidden Lee Village Hospital. I need a power that can completely resist or neutralize physical attack. Denzo ignored Orochimaru's mocking tone. Right now, he only wanted to resolve his current predicament as soon as possible. Hiruzen was too indecisive, lacking the decisiveness and strength a Hokage should possess. With tensions rising in the shinobi world, if something were to happen to him, Hiruzen likely wouldn't be able to handle the situation. Body modifications. Bloodline limits. A glint flashed through Orochimaru's snake-like eyes, and he licked the corner of his mouth, instantly grasping Denzo's intent. What are the success rates for gaining magnet style, Shikatsu Yaku, and the Hazuki clan's bloodline limit? Denzo's sharp gaze locked onto Orochimaru's snake-like pupils, waiting for his response. Magnet style is uncertain, we don't have any experimental subjects with that ability. As for the Kaguya and the Hazuki clan, the success rate is currently around 30%. That's too low. I need more test subjects. And more bloodline samples. Orochimaru suppressed the excitement bubbling inside him, maintaining his usual cold and composed expression. He knew his experiments wouldn't be possible without Denzo's support. And this time, he had caught Denzo at the moment he needed him the most. Gaining Denzo's backing now would be unprecedented, this could push his dream one step closer to immortality. Such an intoxicating and desirable pursuit. My patience is running thin. As long as I get the test subjects, give me 1 month, at most. I'll raise the success rate to over 80%. You better follow through. Denzo tapped his index finger against the back of his left hand. His words were full of warning, but they didn't faze Orochimaru in the slightest. After all, he was lying. He truly didn't have enough data on magnet style, making it difficult to predict the likelihood of a success. The Shikatsu Yaku was indeed extremely aggressive, and past experiments had only yielded around a 30% success rate. But the Hazuki clan's bloodline limit wasn't a dominant ability like the others. If it was merely about gaining the aptitude to learn the Hazuki clan hydrification jutsu, he was already over 80% confident. After all, his dear friend Hiruko was even more obsessed with bloodline limits than he was. After years of experimentation and research, they had already developed a relatively mature transplant method and a well-established theoretical foundation. Chimera Jutsu. What a fascinating jutsu. If Hiruko hadn't been so greedy, trying to go even further by merging multiple bloodline limits at once, attempting to surpass both bloodline limit and bloodline selection, that guy might have already obtained power beyond the reach of ordinary people. Such a greedy man. Just like me. Well then, if there's nothing else, I'll be taking my leave. Orochimaru snapped out of his thoughts, glanced at the barely fixed door, and decisively jumped out of the window. Chapter 64, Literary Dandy, easily excited, dances at dawn. The gathering hosted by Kud more attendees than he expected. Aside from Shikaku, Choza, and Inoichi, along with their respective wives, Minato and Ongoka also came, bringing along Kakashi, Obito, and Rin to join in the feast. Of course, according to them, they were here to thank for his assistance the day before. Additionally, Shibi and his wife Tsunane, who were invited by Inoichi, as well as Mikoto and Tsume, who were called over by Kashina, also joined. Jiraiya came on his own. Kashina, along with Ongoka, Mikoto, Tsunade, and Tsume, sat around the dining table, eating, chatting, and having a great time. In the living room, the Inoshikacho trio and Shibi naturally sat together, engaged in casual conversation. Meanwhile, the wives of the guests, led by Yoshino, moved upstairs, where they enjoyed delicious food and light drinks, chatting freely in a relaxed and comfortable atmosphere. Guy, Genma, and Kurenai, along with Kakashi, Obito, and Rin, after finishing the last touches on a large batch of half-prepared food and bringing it to the table, were finally free to enjoy themselves. The 6 of them set up a big table on the lawn in the courtyard and started indulging in a variety of delicious dishes. Obito, who had been drooling with anticipation, threw away all his manners and began devouring food ravenously. Guy, as energetic as ever, started a competition with him to see who could eat more. Kakashi and Genma, on the other hand, were rare examples of calmness, sitting quietly and savoring their meals in a composed manner. Rin and Kurenai huddled together, whispering non-stop, occasionally bursting into bell-like laughter. "This is really nice." Leaning on the third-floor balcony railing, watched the 6 energetic kids downstairs while listening to the playful banter and laughter echoing around him. This, he thought, was what life should be like. "Ha ha ha, I always knew you liked lively gatherings." Jiraiya walked up beside, carrying a bottle of sake. One hand rested on the railing, while the other lifted the bottle for a small sip. "Jiraiya-senpai, I suddenly remembered that I still haven't settled a certain score with you." Turned to look at the Sannin. This guy had actually taken advantage of his absence from Hidden Leaf Village to corrupt his beloved disciples. The payment for the auction summoning beast, that's all settled, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. If you accompany me for 2 days of sparring, I'll let this slide. Can you first explain exactly what I did? Jiraiya stiffened for a moment, then quickly feigned innocence. Minato, who had originally intended to join the conversation, smoothly turned around and decided to take this opportunity to go check on his students instead. Kakashi's emotional issues still needed careful guidance. "Just how many shady things did you do?" "Ha ha ha. What do you mean?" Okay. I may have told your disciples about some of your glorious battle records." And what?" "Ahem, before returning to the village, I, got into a fight while using your face." "Using my face to fight? Are you sure you mean an actual fight? With who?" "Absolutely a real fight." The opponent was the village chief of Nadeshiko village." "You. Jiraiya. You're such a bastard." Was so furious he almost ground his teeth to dust. He really wanted to strangle Jiraiya right now. Nadeshiko village was quite well known in the shinobi world, not because their kunoichi were particularly powerful, but because it was essentially an all-female village. As a matriarchal clan-based settlement, their method of continuing their lineage was to defeat strong male warriors and take them into the village as husbands. Basically, if they set their sights on a powerful individual, and that person lost, they would be carried off to the village to become a husband immediately. If the defeated still had some potential, they would keep challenging them until they finally won. And Jiraiya had used his face to fight the leader of Nadeshiko village? This was no different from standing there and catching the ceremonial marriage ball, then running away. Who the hell did something like that? He was one of the Sannin. Could he stop lowering the bar for human decency? Ha ha ha. I won the fight, though. And they knew I was using transformation jutsu, so there's no problem at all. Jiraiya scratched his head and laughed awkwardly. When you're out gathering intelligence, it's always better to use a different identity, it makes movement much easier. His face was truly a powerful tool for gathering intelligence. It would be a waste not to make full use of it. Who could have expected that it would catch the attention of KO? 3 days of sparring. Had already made up his mind, during their training, he was going to beat Jiraiya to a pulp. It wasn't out of anger. He simply felt that cleansing the shinobi world's environment was his duty. No problem. As long as you don't use those illusion techniques you always rely on, I'm totally fine with it. This time, I won't use Ganjutsu. Cough cough. Well, maybe not entirely. I still think that Ganjutsu you call Paradise has great tactical value. Had to admit, he had underestimated Jiraiya's shamelessness. Demonic illusion, Paradise was originally something he created as a prank, purely for entertainment. It worked by stimulating the target's most basic physical desires with Ganjutsu. How should he put it? Against normal kunoichi, this Ganjutsu usually just made them blush and had little practical use. But against a pervert like Jiraiya, dared to use it, and Jiraiya dared to enjoy it, so much so that he absolutely refused to dispel the Ganjutsu on his own. Even if his nose bled uncontrollably to the point of needing emergency treatment at Hidden Leaf Village Hospital. Even if, after waking up, his pants swayed an extra few ounces. When it came to being a hopeless lecher, he was convinced that no one in the entire shinobi world could surpass Jiraiya. Name, Jiraiya. Career, ninja. Traits, prophet of destiny, purple. One of the Sannin, purple. Summoner, purple. Hero of the shinobi world, blue. Literary dandy, white. Easily excited, white. Dances at dawn, white. Was Jiraiya strong? Yes, absolutely. Prophet of Destiny, not only greatly enhanced his teaching ability, but it also boosted his mastery of 6 chakra nature transformations: water, fire, earth, wind, yin, and yang, along with his proficiency in secret techniques and sealing jutsu. It even granted him the protection of destiny, meaning as long as his disciple hadn't fully matured, he could recklessly do as he pleased. One of the Sannin boosted his overall combat power while instilling fear in his enemies and increasing his prestige among allies. Summoner massively improved his synergy with summoning beasts, reduced the chakra cost of summoning-related jutsu, and unlocked the full potential of his summoned creatures. Hero of the shinobi world enhanced his charisma, mental fortitude, and personal beliefs, while also improving his resistance to Ganjutsu and his influence over others. On paper, with these traits alone, Jiraiya was undoubtedly a formidable ninja with great personal charm. But then there were those 3 white traits. White traits were a mixed bag, half beneficial, half troublesome. They might not boost his power significantly, but their drawbacks were an absolute nightmare. For instance, literary dandy greatly improved his writing skills, allowing him to become a famous author in the shinobi world. But everything he wrote had to be risque to sell well. Easily excited enhanced his physical resilience, making him more energetic, but also ensured that the slightest provocation would cause an embarrassing reaction. As for dances at dawn, it practically eliminated negative emotions like depression, anxiety, or fear. But in exchange, he needed to regularly indulge in his favorite content, otherwise, his mind would be filled with nothing but garbage thoughts. This guy. It's a good thing you became a ninja. At least you write those novels now and then, which helps lower the crime rate among civilians. Otherwise, I swear, you'd be completely useless to society. Looked at Jiraiya with the most sincere expression imaginable. Chapter 65, A Pervert is Peeping. The perfect wake-up call. What was meant to be just a gathering to prepare for opening a shop and sample various breakfast items ended up becoming a wild celebration for a group of young ninjas. Mikoto, Tsume, and Ongoka teamed up with Kushina to drink Tsunoda under the table. As evening approached, they all bid farewell and left. Shikaku, Choza, Inoichi, and Shibi kept drinking until past 8 p.m., eventually getting so drunk that they all passed out. Their wives had to carry them home. Meanwhile, Kurenai, Rin, and other younger ones stayed until the end, cleaning up the mess in the living room and kitchen before politely taking their leave. As for Jiraiya, was busy flirting with the adorably drunk Kushina, playing tongue battles, completely forgetting about that guy. If it weren't for Minato and Ongoka feeling that something was off after returning home and finally remembering that Jiraiya might have been left behind, Minato made a special trip back and used the Flying Thunder God Jutsu to send Jiraiya to the training cave. The Sannin was probably going to spend the night lying on a balcony somewhere. After all the noise and chaos, the mansion fell into silence once everyone left. Kushina, overwhelmed by the alcohol, snuggled up with for a while before completely passing out, falling asleep in his arms. Glanced at the guest room where Tsunoda was staying. With a sigh, he reluctantly carried Kushina back to her room and tucked her in before heading into the study. Thanks to Memory Master of the Shinobi World, which greatly enhanced his speed reading and memory skills, he quickly skimmed through the numerous scrolls and secret texts Tsunoda had brought back. The Senju clan, as one of the 2 great powerhouses of the Warring States period, had developed water-style techniques far beyond what most clans could achieve. Their mastery of the nature transformation and shape manipulation of water style was unparalleled. They practically turned it into an art. Beyond the diverse water style jutsus, many scrolls contained deeper research on how to shorten hand seals, release more chakra, and create even more powerful techniques in less time. After all, most Senju ninjas were naturally gifted with vast chakra reserves due to their bloodline. Using raw power to overwhelm all techniques and breaking through with sheer force was the most suitable path for them. As a result, even high-level water-style jutsus like the second Hokage's water-severing wave and hard whirlpool water blade consumed an absurd amount of chakra. Of course, some scrolls did mention ways to reduce chakra consumption. However, from K's perspective, it felt like the Senju ancestors were half-hearted about this research. In comparison, the Hazuki clan's approach was clearly more focused on minimizing chakra expenditure while maximizing damage output. While it might seem stingy, their methods were undoubtedly more practical for the average ninja. One of their signature techniques, the water gun jutsu, embodied this philosophy, condensing a tiny water bullet to pierce targets with pinpoint accuracy, prioritizing efficiency over brute force. Huh? This water bullet barrage and water gun jutsu work on the same principle. And they don't even require the Hazuki clan hydrification jutsu as a prerequisite? The starting level is already firing over 10 water bullets, talk about spending chakra like it's nothing. Just as Kwa was mentally praising the Hazuki clan's water-style techniques, the Senju ancestors immediately humbled him. Aside from the higher chakra consumption, they had completely dissected and analyzed the principles behind the water gunjutsu. They even took it a step further, using the same principles to develop an even larger scale, more destructive technique. The corrosive nature of water style. This is basically a precursor to boil style. Hidden Mist Village would probably be furious if they saw this. Water style shape transformation experiments, testing various high and low temperature techniques. Sharpness, cutting, twisting, surging, erosion, density, fluidity, gentleness. Wave riding jutsu allows free movement within water. If combined with the Hazuki clan hydrification jutsu, it's perfect for underwater stealth, ambushes, and escapes. Water blade slash, coating a weapon with a high-speed rotating water blade. Should work well on kunai, right? Wait. Don't I have a ninja sword? Originally planned to read only 2 scrolls and sleep before midnight, but in the face of the Senju clan's vast collection of water-style knowledge, that plan became a joke. Even as a transmigrator, he couldn't help but be amazed by the innovative ideas and experimental attempts he discovered in these scrolls. Who would have thought that centuries ago, the Senju ancestors had already considered using the nature transformation of water style to enhance their strikes, achieving an effect similar to hydraulic amplification in modern machinery. A single punch would unleash successive waves of force, stacking layer upon layer, increasing the user's power several times, if not dozens of times. If not for the fact that controlling chakra in this manner required an even greater level of precision than monstrous strength, who could possibly stand against the Senju clan? As the morning sunlight filled the study, K finally snapped out of his reading trance. He glanced at the wall clock, it was already pointing to 8 a.m. Putting down the scrolls, he went to wash up. After making himself breakfast with the leftover ingredients from the previous day, he checked the still silent bedroom, packed an extra portion of breakfast, left a note, and headed out toward the training cave. Even though he hadn't slept all night, his extraordinary mental resilience kept him from feeling tired. Yesterday, he had already arranged to spar with Jiraiya for a few days. Being late on the first day wouldn't look good. The training cave was located northwest of Hidden Leaf Village, in the opposite direction of the village's bird-summoning beast sanctuary. Jiraiya had spent quite some time running around the village to acquire the land near the cave, even pouring a significant amount of his manuscript royalties into it. Later, Minato, having frequently trained here with Jiraiya, also grew fond of the place. Over the years, the two had sporadically invested funds into it. What was once just a cave on a cliff had transformed into an elegant, wall-hanging structure, and the barren terrain had been turned into a picturesque retreat with pavilions and lakes. From a distance, it looked like a hidden paradise. A falcon glided down from the sky. Activating his sensory abilities, spotted Jiraiya fast asleep in the largest building nestled against the cliff. Leaping off the falcon's back, he took a deep breath and shouted, "A pervert is peeping at the women's bathhouse. Catch him." Bang. Thud. Jiraiya shot out of his room before even opening his eyes. Realizing he had stepped into thin air, he traced a perfect arc in the sky before crashing straight into the lake below, sending water splashing in all directions. "Couldn't you be more gentle, like Minato?" Jiraiya groaned, lying on the water's surface with chakra gathered beneath him. His face was full of pain. Wasn't a normal wake-up call good enough? That yell nearly scared him to death. "Now hurry up, eat, and let's get started." A hungover Kushina scratched her sun-warmed cheek, realizing she had slept far too long. She jolted upright in bed, wide-eyed, scanning the guest room's decor before glancing at her camisole and lifting the blanket to check her shorts. "Kushina, you're such a disappointment." Puffing up her cheeks in frustration, she smacked her bare thigh, only to wince and inhale sharply at the sting. The atmosphere had been just right last night. Even if Tsunade was still in the house, would she have really barged in to watch? How did she black out at such a crucial moment? If only she had held on for a few more minutes. Drinking ruins everything. Drinking ruins everything. From this day forward, no more alcohol.